never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're back Monday morning live on YouTube, 7 a.m. It is New Year's Day observed, right? Monday morning here.
What?
All the bowl games are today. A lot of the midday bowl games and everything.
Yeah.
It's all happening today.
Because it's not New Year's Day.
No, it's not. That was yesterday.
Right.
All the NFL games were there. So now college football. We have all day starting at noon here today, Sam. It's a big day.
Great.
So Week 17
happened.
Mostly happens. The biggest game of the week, though, still tonight. The Bills are in town. Have you seen Josh Allen yet?
Like personally?
Yeah, he's in town.
No.
He's probably at a coffee shop or something right now.
You think?
Yeah. We should go. We should go find Josh. I got my jersey and everything. Anyway,
get it signed.
We got a lot to talk about from yesterday's Week 17. So we're going to get into it. The 15 games. Some we'll talk about more than others.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, we've reached the point in the season where there's some very, like, even red zone, or, they're like, look, we'll show you a touchdown, but don't expect to see a lot of this game.
That's it.
That's
it. So Cardinals fans, once again, Cardinals, Falcons, and the Jags-Texans game that meant nothing, but, both teams are happy coming out of it. We won't touch on it as much. So let's get into it. Starting way back, Thursday night football, Dallas Cowboys 27, Tennessee Titans 13. Again, it was a meaningless game for the Titans for the most part. There was this weird path. I think there's still this weird path where they could become a wild card team, but the Titans were, pretty much saving for this week or for next week against the Jags with the play-in game for the AFC South. The Cowboys, a lot at stake because they still have a shot at the number one seed if a few things break. But ultimately, they took care of business, even though the Titans gave them a little bit of a scare during this game.
And more of a shot now than they did when they were playing this game.
That's right.
Like Philadelphia lost another game.
Philadelphia has lost, but Dallas was good, man. I think, once again, offensively, there's this stat out there. If you take out the turnovers, Dak is up there with it's just for perspective.
Okay.
If you take out the turnovers,
yes,
Dak Prescott's up there with Patrick Mahomes for EPA per play this year. It's just to highlight the efficiency of the Cowboys offense, which, by the way, way back in week 1 was horrendous, right? Started out slow. Dak got hurt, but since he's been back, the offense has been really effective. And then there's some turnovers in there where Dak's making a great throw and it gets, dropped for an interception. He has a bad interception in there, a fumble. But outside of those plays, Dallas is moving the ball a lot.
T.Y. Hilton, I think, has made a big difference to this team.
Yes.
Like, everyone was focusing on the OBJ thing, and I don't think this was some masterful, like, bait and switch, wave over here and then do something complicated with your left hand. I think they just ended up stumbling into T.Y. Hilton while they were trying to negotiate for the OBJ thing. But Hilton, it turns out, still has some juice left in there. And when you have CeeDee Lamb doing what he does, when you have Michael Gallup working his way back, like, Hilton has been making some plays in every single game since they signed him. That's quite a big addition to that offense.
It's like Dallas stumbling into Dak Prescott when they were looking for Paxton Lynch.
Yeah.
Stumbling into T.Y. where they were looking to Odell Beckham. On Tennessee's side, Joshua Dobbs, who had been with the team for about 10 days, he got the start. Former University of Tennessee quarterback and bounced around the league, former Steeler, various other teams I wasn't even aware of, I guess. So he hasn't played a whole lot. Initially, the thought was it because Malik Willis was benched, or was it because the Titans were
protecting him
for next week? Now, Dobbs and the passing attack was far more effective with Dobbs under center than with Malik Willis. However, you still had some bad decisions in there. He had an interception, could have had another one in there.
Still not good.
Yeah, still not great. So, but I do wonder if Tennessee says we're a little bit more effective in the pass game with Dobbs rather than Malik Willis.
I mean, yeah, you look at what, like, obviously Tennessee was focusing on the upcoming week, the winning-in game that they're going to have to take the division. And if they're asking themselves, like, what is the offense that gives us the best chance to win absent Ryan Tannehill, who I think, was it before or after this game, got officially placed on IR and therefore shut down?
It was just before this game, I think. We knew this going in.
Yeah. So Tannehill's not coming back for the final game. It's going to be either Dobbs or Malik Willis. And if you're asking yourself, like, which one of these guys gives us, which offense or what offense do we build that gives us the best chance of winning this one game and the next game, I guess, as well, I still think it's some version of an offense that has Malik Willis as the quarterback. Now, obviously, it's going to be a very different offense than it is with either Tannehill or with Dobbs at quarterback. But if you lean into Malik Willis's rushing threat, like if you build some kind of Bears-like offense the way they do with Justin Fields, that's, I think, your best chance. Like full read option looks every single play, right? I honestly think that opens up more space for Derrick Henry on the ground. I think that's your best way of winning.
Is this a time? I mean, the Titans are in desperate straits here, right? Like they didn't win a game in December and they can still make the playoffs. That's never happened in NFL history. Would they go to a potential 2-quarterback system, give the Jags something crazy to prepare for? We'll preview that, of course, on Thursday. But the point here was
Titans. That's the other element of this, right? Is that whether or not they do that, Jacksonville now has to prepare for 2 quarterbacks because they just saw 2 in the space of a couple of weeks. Yeah,
there might be something to that as well. The other thing is that game's going to be on Saturday, right? So schedule-wise, we already know there's 2 games on Saturday, Titans and Jags in prime time, Saturday night. The Titans do get the benefit of the extra couple days. So if you are going to implement something new, they did get a couple extra days to prepare. The Jags get 1 less day because they just played yesterday. So there's something to that potentially. But Dallas wins 27-13. They're 12-4. Titans fall to 7-9. They haven't won a game since I don't know, ages ago. Halloween. When the heck was it? All right, let's go to yesterday's action. I don't even know where to start. Let's just start. Let's go Patriots 23, Dolphins 21. We'll go through the 1 o'clock games here and fly through some that didn't matter as much. But New England gets the win. This game was a little crazy because of all the injuries here. You had Teddy Bridgewater getting the start. There was no over Tua Tagovailoa. You had Teron Armstead out at left tackle. Xavier Howard was out for the Dolphins. And the Patriots had only 2 cornerbacks. 2 of their cornerbacks and their 3 of their top 5 all injured. And they had to stitch it together in the secondary. So a lot of injuries on both sides. Teddy Bridgewater gets hurt about halfway through the game, smacks his hand and broke a finger. So he'll probably be questionable for next week. I assume Skylar Thompson had to come in, but New England pulls it off 23-21.
That play was like a perfect storm of nightmare for Teddy. Like, bad decision. On the follow-through, cracks his hand off the helmet of another guy and then gets stiff-armed into the turf on the way to the touchdown for the pick 6. Like, just start to finish was an absolute disaster for Teddy Bridgewater on that particular play. Teddy was taking some shots in this game, aggressive passes as opposed to getting hit. Because that was one of the big questions is how come Teddy had looked like Teddy in this offense as opposed to looking more like Tua within this offense? Because in theory, they were kind of similar quarterbacks of guys that had been pegged as being too conservative, didn't really take deep shots, weren't as aggressive as you needed them to be. But then all of a sudden, Tyreek Hill, Mike McDaniel, the offense comes in, and Tua looks like a different player. Teddy looked the same, though. It hadn't performed the same miracles on Teddy as it had with Tua in the limited time he'd been in the game. Before this, he actually looked more aggressive in this game, though. He had a much deeper average depth of target than you usually see from him, 10.7, which, without checking, feels like it has to be the highest average depth of target in Teddy's career. He was taking some shots deep down the field and was making some plays, and then that was just a bad, like, back-breaking decision that almost cost them, did cost them a touchdown and kind of cost them the game.
So it was 14-10 Dolphins, this play that you're talking about. So it's late in the third quarter. So Bridgewater did play the majority of the game. But Kyle Duggar, so New England with no cornerbacks, right? They're bringing in Tay Hayes is coming in, playing football for them. They played 4 safeties pretty extensively, and they played about 6 snaps of man coverage. So New England, they had been trending toward playing more zone anyway this season, but they usually play 30-35% man coverage. They played 6 snaps of man coverage with no corners there. On this particular play, good little scheme, inverted cover 2. Kyle Duggar's playing the inside linebacker, the Mike linebacker position here, and he just robs the middle of the field, makes a great play, and a really athletic return. Remember, Kyle Duggar was the first draft pick of the post-Tom Brady era, right? They had a second-round pick. He's this small school safety, really athletic, and it's the second pick 6 of the season, made some really nice plays here. So Bridgewater, a little force into coverage. Duggar makes a great play. That ended up being not the actual difference in the game, but a huge difference in the game, because this game was trudging along for a while, 7-7 for a while into the third quarter. Dolphins got up, and then this put the Patriots ahead for good and took Bridgewater out of the game.
This game also featured a weird breakdown in the Miami defense on consecutive plays. The Patriots got it down to the low red zone, and then Miami lines up on defense without covering the slot receiver, like at all. You see this happen sometimes. Something breaks down, a guy is not covered. Somebody doesn't go out to cover a particular wide receiver, and usually NFL teams are pretty good at spotting that and, taking advantage of it. Free play, essentially. So Miami lines up, doesn't cover a receiver at all. I think the receiver was Tyquan Thornton, was waving to the quarterback like, hey, there's nobody here, throw me the ball quickly. New England either doesn't see it or doesn't care and tries to run right up the gut anyway. They end up getting saved this time by themselves, calling a timeout before running it. So remember, like a couple of weeks ago where they scored the touchdown and had it taken off the board because they called a timeout and took their own touchdown off the board. They did it again, only this time I don't think they were going to get in. Called a timeout, thought about it. They then line up again coming out of the timeout, and Miami did it again. They didn't cover a receiver again this time. Coming out of the timeout, forgot a receiver. And this time it wasn't even the slot guy. There was one receiver out on his own, and they didn't cover him. Like, a linebacker ends up getting made to look like an idiot because this time the Patriots did take advantage of it and threw the ball to the open receiver, and the linebacker was like the closest guy to sort of realizing, something bad's happened here. I got to run over and try and make a play. And he ends up sort of almost contesting it and just looking like he got beat, right? But the dude, like the linebacker had no business. Like it's not his guy. You know what I mean? Somebody should have been out there. Like I said, sometimes it happens. You line up and you've just somehow not covered a receiver. That it happened twice on consecutive plays, the second of which was coming out of a timeout, is genuinely inexcusable defense.
Ben Stockwell chimes in because he was just reviewing this game. He said they didn't have any corners on the play, on the field on that play. Fejedelem and Javon Holland were the only DBs on the field, a couple safeties. Which
feels like a personnel problem if you've come out of a huddle and they had a wide receiver in there. Like,
really
what was
bad.
The plan?
Really bad. That was that captain 11-play, 89-yard drive by the Patriots. They went up 23-14. Dolphins came back with a late touchdown to Mike Gesicki, but it wasn't enough after the onside kick was recovered by New England. So the Patriots are alive. They're 8-8. They're currently the number 7 seed in the AFC. If they can beat Buffalo next week, they're in. If they lose to Buffalo next week, which could be a meaningless game for the Bills, depending on what happens tonight and depending on what happens with the Chiefs next Saturday, but it's doubtful. It's doubtful that it's meaningless. Mm-hmm. So the Patriots probably have to beat a loaded, fully loaded Bills team, and then the Dolphins will need some help, right? They're going to have to. They need New England to lose, and they're going to have to win next week against the Jets to get into the playoffs after a great start in Miami.
23 total pressures from just 4 guys for the Patriots. Judon, Josh Uche, Dietrich Wise. Those are the 3 guys that have been getting pressure off the edge all season. And then Christian Barmore, who had a monster game.
Christian Barmore, the former second-round pick from 2021, highest grade of his career, if it stands.
Yeah.
It'll probably stand at this point. So Barmore was very disruptive. Patriots maybe finding another effective pass rusher in this one. The PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Well, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. All right, where else do we want to go here from yesterday? Usually I stick with the AFC East, but they played a 4 o'clock game, the Jets.
That throws off your whole system.
It does. It really does. New York Giants 38, Colts 10. We'll touch on this quickly.
Okay.
Giants clinch a playoff spot. They're 9-6-1. Really dominant outing here for the Giants. And Colts fall to 4-11-1. They just looked inept once again on that side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball in particular.
Another tough one for Coach Saturday. Yeah, I mean, Nick Foles, bad again.
So he gets
hurt.
So he gets knocked out of the game on a complete protection bust.
Really bad, because 2 people were unblocked.
Two people unblocked, Kayvon Thibodeau included.
Right, the DB had to get out of the way of Kayvon Thibodeau, who was also unblocked.
Meanwhile, Foles is looking to the opposite side of the field and about to like pump fake, right?
Yeah.
So you've got an overload blitz, and this is the beauty of Wink in the Giants. You have an overload blitz. Nick Foles completely unaware. I think there's probably some issue with Foles on this play, and there's some issue with the protection scheme, which also could be Foles. And Kayvon Thibodeau basically gets a free run at him, spikes him into the turf, and Foles gets knocked out of the game. Sam Ehlinger has to come in and finish it. And that was kind of like not the least of the worries here, but it was after Foles was having a tough time of it outside of a patented Nick Foles YOLO ball that went for 49 yards to Paris Campbell. Outside of that, the Colts did not do much offensively.
Yeah, and that's basically all Nick Foles has been trying to do since he's come into the lineup is just heave it deep and hope that he's been trying to play Taylor Heineke ball, which, to be fair, was kind of Nick Foles' ball before Heineke made it his own. And it's not been working. It's not been going well. Yeah, so that was weird. Every time Isaiah Hodgins makes a play, because he's number 18, I sort of think, oh, is Kenny Golladay alive? And then no, it's Isaiah Hodgins. Kenny Golladay got 1 snap in this game.
Hodgins was a good college receiver that I thought would get a little bit more love come draft time, and he's made do. Former Bill, he had 4 catches and a touchdown. Richie James once again with a nice game, and Daniel Jones with an effective game. He got away with one early, thrown to a linebacker, but finishes 19 of 24 for 177, another 91 yards on the ground and 2 scores.
Yes.
For Daniel Jones. Showing really good speed to the edge on a couple plays, including the 1 scramble.
Daniel Jones is the most confusingly effective running quarterback that I can ever remember.
He's fast.
He is, but he's fast. He's fast, athletic, and strong, and doesn't look like any of it.
He's fast and willing. He's a long strider.
Yeah.
Long strider.
He's like, I don't know, it just doesn't look like it should work, and it does consistently.
Yeah.
He does, however, take more weird, unnecessary, and seemingly accidental big shots than any quarterback I can think of. Like, I
could protect himself a little bit better, yeah.
But there's sometimes where it's like, there are times where sometimes you're running at a guy, a defender, you're one-on-one, you try and put a move on him, and somehow he just reads it perfectly, and what you end up doing is actually making it worse than if you just run straight at a weak shoulder, for example. Like if you try and juke him and he reads it and you end up juking right into his leverage, you end up taking a bigger shot than if you just run straight at his weak shoulder and taking like a half heavy shot. Jones seems to do that a lot, where he'll like run up, he'll see he's one-on-one with a guy, he's decided he's not going to take the easy way out and slide like, a quarterback potentially should. He's decided he's going to take advantage of that, God-given rushing talent and make a move on the guy. Only he gets it wrong, and he ends up making a move right into like a drilled hit from a linebacker. Or, he's going to have to take a shot just to get to the end zone and make the it's just I don't know. He just seems to always take these massive shots that at some point feel like they should be a problem.
Would it surprise you if I told you that Daniel Jones currently ranks 20th all-time in single-season rushing yards for a quarterback?
Yes. mean, you could have stopped after all time, and anything at the end of that would surprise me.
So Daniel Jones currently 708 rushing yards. He's a little bit behind Cam Newton from 2012. So the stats for Daniel Jones this year, almost identical to Cam Newton's second year in the NFL.
Of course.
Few fewer yards, about the same yards per carry. He's got 7 touchdowns, Jones. And when we go back, and he still has another game. When we go back and look at the 2022 Giants and trying to figure them out, Jones' rushing ability is a big part of it. No, this isn't the first time we've mentioned it on the show here, because he's had games where he's had 7 or 8 first downs. But a game like this, where the thing about rushing quarterbacks, when there's not anything there in the passing game, and there was a couple plays like that, right, where he just beat a blitz on one, that touchdown, maybe it was the touchdown. He just beat a blitz with his legs for 13 yards on one. Instead of throwing hot, he just beat the blitz with his legs. When there's nothing there in the passing game, Daniel Jones being able to make a little bit happen, a little bit in the designed running game. I think those are like the sneaky hidden yards that have helped make the Giants the number 6 seed in the NFC this year.
Look, it's what all the scouting reports said at the time, just another Cam Newton, and that's what's being borne out in the NFL.
I mean, my comparison was on the other side today, or yesterday, Nick Foles.
Your Daniel Jones.
My Daniel Jones comp was Nick Foles, and obviously
there's quite a large difference between Nick Foles and Cam Newton.
Well, yeah, as passers, Daniel Jones and Nick Foles. As runners, not so much.
No.
The other key play here is 14-3, late second quarter. Nick Foles with a pick 6 to Giants legend Landon Collins, back with the Giants this season with a pick 6 that that made it 21-3 and pretty much insurmountable.
That's a bad pick
for the
6.
Colts. Anyway,
Evan Neal had a pretty good game.
Who?
Evan Neal, right tackle, rookie, Giants.
Good.
Been struggling this year. Didn't struggle so much this game.
Not yesterday.
That's important.
Nice note from you.
Thanks.
So the Giants are locked in to the 6th seed, and the Colts are locked in to no higher, by my quick math, no higher than the 5th pick in the NFL draft. Don't think they can get any higher than number 5. They could be as low as 6 at least, 6 or 7.
But they'd have to win a game for that to happen.
They would have to win next week against. Are they playing Houston? I think it's Houston. I'm assuming all the division games. All right, let's go. New Orleans Saints 20, Philadelphia Eagles 10. So the Saints, they moved to 7-9. They thought they could have been playing for their playoff lives. They needed a lot of things to happen. But more importantly, the Eagles fall to 13-3 and are in danger of losing the number 1 seed as they head into next week against the Giants. Now, they'll play the Giants, who locked up the 6th seed and have nothing else to play for. But, not a great game for Philly.
No, the idea a couple of weeks ago that Philadelphia might not get that number 1 seed seemed kind of ridiculous. They needed to lose out. Dallas needed to win out. It seemed unlikely. And all of a sudden, Philadelphia have lost those 2 games. Dallas have won those 2 games. And it's just that one game against the Giants remaining who, sure, they've nothing to play for. On the other hand, it is a division game. They're probably not just going to give it up. And this, I think a week ago was Philadelphia didn't come out of that badly. Sure, they lost. Yes, it was against Dallas. That's not a great outcome. But they looked fine, and Minshew in particular looked fine. This game was a little bit more concerning, though, because the offense didn't look fine.
You're just referring to the offense because the Eagles as a whole were terrible defensively against the Cowboys.
Right.
And honestly, I do think that.
But Dallas has a good offense. So
no, I get it. But I think that might be the more concerning thing is that Philly's defense was that susceptible going into the playoffs where they might have to play the 49ers, the Cowboys again, and better offenses.
But the offense completely disappearing in this game was problematic. Also, as they've had the number 1 offensive line in the NFL all season long. They've been number 1 in PFF's offensive line rankings for the preseason rankings and then every single week of the year. Without Lane Johnson at right tackle, it's very different. Jack Driscoll just...
There were some issues there with Driscoll for sure.
He is absolutely not at that kind of level. And again, it's another one of those situations like Cincinnati where you can deal with that, but you kind of need to have a plan every play, which is doable, again, but it's just it puts you into this little box where you can't do everything you want to because every play you have to think, all right, what are we doing to help the right tackle? And if the answer is nothing, what is the play we're running? Because it now has a time limit attached to it.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew was sacked 6 times, and so it's easy to say, well, they missed Lane Johnson. He was sacked 6 times. I think the actual sacks were a lot.
Right, but 2 of them came from Driscoll.
Yes, but beyond that, I do think a lot of them were on Minshew, and there were plays where the Saints were just covering it down the field, right? There were some coverage sacks in there where this is where the difference between Gardner Minshew and Jalen Hurts showed up, right? Jalen Hurts has had a lot of plays where he just doesn't have anybody open down the field, and he makes something of it with his legs. Minshew tries to make something happen, but gets sacked, right? So there's where you saw that difference, right? Where you didn't see the difference between Hurts and Minshew outside of a couple of miscommunications in that Dallas game on Christmas Eve. In this particular game, Minshew was unable to do anything when it was covered up down the field for the Eagles.
Yeah. Andy Dalton, on the other hand, started on fire. I think started 13-13. And then it was like he started so well that he kind of forgot he was Andy Dalton, and threw an interception it was the kind of throw Andy Dalton can't make, let's be fair. It was a far hash, trying to thread it into a hole in the zone after double pumping. It's like, okay, that requires a level of arm strength. That particular throw that you've never had, and you certainly don't have now, even though you just started 13 for 13. Like, leave that throw to the Josh Allens of the world. You do not have that particular club in your bag. And I forget who the DB was, but ends up just dropping underneath it and picking it off.
The other key plays in this game, the Eagles, so there's three massive plays in this game. The only touchdown for the Eagles was A.J. Brown, where he just, his cornerback just gets wrecked, falls to the ground.
He went full dude and dominated the guy.
Yeah, full dude. Thank you.
Paulson Adebo.
A.J. Brown just creates explosive plays out of nothing. This was a nothing play. It was a jump ball. That didn't look like a jump ball because his corner, Adebo was on the ground. But A.J. Brown just catches it and outruns the defense for 78 yards. That's the only touchdown for the Eagles. That's one. The other one was Kenneth Gainwell did not have an official carry in this game, but if he had, it would have been a 31-yard touchdown that was negated by a Landon Dickerson holding call.
Terrible call.
Really bad call. It was one of those, right? Like Gainwell makes the cut, Dickerson's blocking his guy who's trying to get into the gap, and then he buries him, right? And those are the plays that are usually holding, right? The guy who looks like he's about to make the tackle gets pancaked or tackled, right? Using his momentum against him. Those are usually holding calls, right? It usually because the offensive lineman gets his hands outside the frame and all that stuff. But if you go back, Dickerson had perfect hand position. And Ben, make sure we give proper credit for Dickerson on this play, unless you disagree. But it looked like just a pure pancake and the Eagles' second touchdown, but it got negated. They settled for a field goal instead. Wasn't the actual difference in the game, but obviously it was huge.
I mean, it was a 4-point penalty.
Yeah, a 4-point penalty.
They get a field goal at the end of it, but that penalty cost them 4 points.
And that would have made it 13-10, right? 13-7. That was just before the A.J. Brown touchdown. So it was a close game, and then Gardner Minshew with the pick six to the returning Marshawn Lattimore. Great read by Lattimore. Takes it to the house, and that sealed the deal for the Saints with not much time left in the fourth.
Yeah, that was bad. Great, like I said, great jump on the ball by Lattimore. Very bad by Minshew, which was, that's reasonably uncharacteristic for Minshew. We've made the point before that he's generally been pretty careful with the football. That was a careless pass attempt in a must-pass situation and cost them the game. There are two things that you forgot to mention in this game, though. Number one, Brandon Graham reached 10 sacks for the season. And you get nothing out of it because you were cowardly and pathetic, and you didn't re-up the bet. Even though people said it would auto-renew, you actually went out of your way to not renew this bet. You lost faith in Brandon Graham, and he has proved you wrong.
I mean, it's not my best year for decision-making this year. We know that across the board.
Number two, the New Orleans Saints stopped a double cheek push play.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see that part.
Yeah, they went for, I think it was 4th and 1. They went full double cheek push.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the Eagles got stuffed.
And they got stuffed. Now, there was a lot mechanically wrong with the double cheek push.
Was that good mauling?
Minshew went too high. His pad level was off. There was a lot wrong with the hand placement on the cheeks. Gainwell maybe went in like up around the torso, trying to like, that's not going to work. You got to be full. You got to get under the cheek.
Hurts has a better base.
Yeah, well, because the squatting is 600 pounds. That gives you a lot of cushion for the pushing. And I'm just saying that
legit pushing here.
There was a lot wrong with the double cheek push. Great credit to New Orleans for stopping it, but I think that was a failure of execution on the double cheek push, which is still unstoppable unless you screw it up.
Yeah, that's big news. Mm-hmm. 34-year-old Brandon Graham with a double-digit sack season.
Hell of a year for him, seriously. Like, it didn't look like this was within his range of outcomes anymore, and yet he's really bounced back with a great season as more of a situational player now, not so much of a full-time guy. He's crushing it.
Incredible career from Brandon Graham. For Eagles fans, the only other time that he's had double-digit sacks, including the playoffs, was 2017 when they won the Super Bowl in Philadelphia. Rashid Shaheed remains uncoverable as well.
That was well done.
Thank you.
You said that quickly, deliberately.
I was nervous.
Yeah.
I was nervous because it is a tongue twister sometimes, but Shaheed continues to get open deep, man.
Yeah.
He's really good.
The Saints receiving core is a fun group. Like, it's actually – there's a lot of talent, a lot of variety in that group.
That's what I want to say. Like, the Saints defense playing as well as they didn't, because they sacked Minshew 6 times, as we mentioned. Things were they covered really well outside of the 178-yarder. The Saints being 7-9 is one of the curious parts of this season for me, because I think they do have a good, solid defense. Dalton played well this year. When the receivers have been healthy, they have some weapons, right? There's like a lot of good things on the field for the Saints, and they just didn't win a ton of games.
I mean, I would be fascinated, in the world of what ifs. What if you took this group of receivers, this version of Andy Dalton playing the way he's been, and let Sean Payton coach them for a year? What would that have looked like?
You think Dennis Allen could be the difference here?
I mean, I think the difference between Dennis Allen and Sean Payton as the offensive mind behind this team is a needle mover. And actually, in this year above all others, like if Sean Payton just hung around, he had a playoff team.
Yeah. Again, they play some good games, man. The Saints, it's just not there every single week. All right, Cleveland Browns 24, Washington Commanders 10. Browns move to 7-9. Commanders fall to 7-8-1, and they are officially eliminated from playoff contention.
We can be eliminated today? Huh? Turns out Ron didn't know.
The somewhat inside joke there that people don't realize, Ron Rivera, Washington Commanders head coach, was unaware that when they lost this game, there was a chance that later that afternoon, had the Green Bay Packers won, the Commanders would get eliminated. The question was, have you thought about having Sam Howell start next week if you get eliminated? Whereas Ron had the awkward pause. We don't have the video for this, right? We didn't fire it up. But
it exists, and it would have been probably quite easy.
It just feels like something that you would have already had spooled up, but you didn't.
No, I didn't.
But Rivera paused for about 5 seconds and said, we could be eliminated.
Like a vacant
and
look.
They were.
Yeah, vacant look in his face while he ran through this, and then went, we can be eliminated? They're like, yeah. Like, if the Packers win, you're done. You're out of here.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know how much does that actually matter.
I mean, look, in this
world, would he have coached
of
the game differently, knowing that there's no next week if you lose?
I mean,
you know, you have to win. You still know you have to win. In this world of coaching decisions, and do you have all the available information? That we keep talking about how the reason analytics is really good is because you're bringing in all the available information. He didn't even know that they could be eliminated in this game. That's problematic. I mean, that doesn't affect your win probability or anything. It shouldn't affect any in-game decision. The only in-game decision that affects is injury status, right? Like as a player, you're going to grind it out a little bit more because there is no tomorrow, right? If we lose this game, the Packers could win and we're eliminated. The only thing is who you play and maybe where you play them. There's no in-game decision that's like, oh man, our season's on the line, I got to go for it now. Like, you're still trying to maximize win probability and win the game. The thing that lowered win probability the most, though, was probably starting Carson Wentz, which did not go so well. He finishes 16 of 28 for 143 with 3 interceptions. Sacked 3 times. Passer rating of 31.4. 4 total turnover-worthy plays for Carson Wentz. And look, I've been an advocate for a little more YOLO from Carson Wentz after all last year. But this was too much.
I think we're down to 3 turnover-worthy plays.
Oh, down to 3 turnover-worthy plays. I should have checked my notes. Should have checked again. So it was all 3 interceptions. And all 3 interceptions looked like Carson Wentz has been sitting there watching Taylor Heineke for the last 7 or 8 weeks saying, man, this dude gets away with throwing the ball into double coverage. I could do that. Because every single one was thrown into double coverage and none of them had a chance. Well, not every single one, but at least 2 of them were thrown into double coverage without a prayer.
Yeah, it's like the secret to the vibes from Heineke have been just going YOLO and giving my guys a chance to make plays. I mean, I can do that plus 5 yards. I got a bigger arm than him. I can make even more spectacular YOLO balls into double coverage deep downfield. I mean, this is the problem with when your quarterback decision-making process is based off, like, have we won a game last week? If yes, start the same guy. If no, go to the other dude. I think it's based off nothing. So all of a sudden you throw in Carson Wentz, who's just out here, like, heaving the ball blindly downfield, and it doesn't work out this time. So now you just look dumb.
What should they have done? Who should Washington have started? Because you sit here every single week and trash Taylor Heineke. This dude's, he's not good. He gets away with all this stuff. Who's the better quarterback, Carson Wentz or Taylor Heineke? Who should they have started?
There is no better quarterback. There is only bad.
You have to start someone, though, Sam. If you were Ron Rivera.
My only request in all of this has been for a logical process that is not blindly riding whoever feels good this week. It's like, give me a reason. I don't even care what the reason is. Give me a reason that one of these guys should start over the other. And the reason is not we won a game last week or we've won a couple of games in the last few weeks. That's not a reason. That's an outcome. That is something happened for the team. 53 or 45 guys dressed and we won the game, right? That's not telling me why one of these guys should start over the other. Give me a reason. One of these guys is giving his receivers a chance to make a play. Whatever your reason is, come up with a logical differentiator between these 2 quarterbacks and explain that is why one of them is starting versus the other one. They never did that because I don't think they actually have one. They just decided, it feels good for this guy right now, and now it doesn't, so we're going to go back to the other guy. Now it doesn't feel good for either of them. They both made mistakes recently, and therefore they both lost games.
Yeah, feels like a tough position to be in if you're trying to start a quarterback in Washington. I didn't hate the move to put Wentz in, but again, go with the opposite of what I've said all season. This was Wentz's worst game of the season, and it's officially his worst year. He only played 8 games, but in 2020, Carson Wentz was the worst starting quarterback in the NFL for the Eagles before he got benched for Jalen Hurts. He had a 60 passing grade. Right now he's at 59. Right now, so he's worse than his worst season. So it's bad for Wentz. Probably his future in Washington. This was ugly, man. I mean, it was really just some prayers.
Yeah,
and granted, one of those prayers became a touchdown one time against the Vikings, but not in this one. The Browns caught them.
And and even in this game, there were like flashes, right? Like 4th and 3, they were basically do or die at this point. He makes a nice pass to Cam Sims. To be honest, it was more of a great play by Sims than it was from Wentz. But, you had a do-or-die final moment. Remember, like 2017, his MVP caliber type of season, the whole thing was built off like clutch plays and 3rd and 4th down, improbable high-leverage situations. He had one of those in this game, made it, and then like almost immediately after, just blindly heaves it into double coverage again. You're like, what? How is the same guy making those 2 plays? Like, brilliant clutch play to the one place it can go on 4th and 3 to keep the game alive 1 second, and then the next play, well, we've dodged that bullet. Let's just close our eyes and go again. Like, what? How does that work?
I told you. He's been watching the Heineke film. He's been watching this work.
I wouldn't watch what
he was watching Heineke during the winning streak. He's like, I need more of that.
I wouldn't use Heineke tape as teaching tape if I was a quarterback.
You see, I'm being a little facetious here.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Also, terrible. So there was some interesting DB play in this game. Martin Emerson had another great game. A couple of pass breakups. They were pretty big plays. On the other hand, Kendall Fuller had one of the most pitiful tackle attempts you're ever going to see on a receiver and turned like a routine first down pass for Amari Cooper into a touchdown by just not even getting close to a tackle. Like, just ran up. It was like he was playing two-hand touch. Ran up, put two hands on him, and then fell over. And Cooper just runs down the sideline for a touchdown.
Yeah, the Cooper. Yeah, I was gonna suggest the. See, I look at it from a positive spin. You look at it from a negative spin.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about the Amari Cooper breakout here. You know, the Watson to Cooper connection.
Yeah,
here.
well, it's very easy to break out when the one guy on that side of the field just falls over rather than tackles you.
Amari Cooper with 3 catches for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. 105 of the 169 passing yards for Deshaun Watson. Watson had only 9 completions. So he solved the winning games with only 9 completions standard that we've
Another
set
box
for him.
checked.
Yep,
in his
check that
comeback.
box. Watson had 9 completions and was sacked 5 times. He had some exciting, plays where he broke free from sacks.
Yeah. There was a couple of plays yesterday league-wide where every now and again you're reminded just how freaking hard it is to be a defensive lineman now in terms of what you can and can't do to the quarterback. Was it this one? I forget which order it was, but this was a play, I think, where the guy had a free run through to the quarterback and basically pulled up thinking that the guy had thrown the ball, and then he just breaks out of the pocket and runs. And it's like, okay, on the one hand, you're going to say you got to finish that play because this can happen. On the other hand, if he does finish the play, there's a reasonable chance that he gets flagged for roughing the passer. That's a really fine line to have to thread for a defensive lineman. Like, you're asking a lot of those guys now in a very short period of time with very imperfect information. You know what I mean? Like, bodies are flying around you. You're trying to navigate space between offensive linemen and defensive linemen with a quarterback about to throw the ball and or run and or whatever. And you have to figure out, does he still have the ball? Was I close enough that I can hit him anyway? If I hit him, can I figure out how to do it without hitting him in the head and taking him to ground and landing on him? And then if you don't do all that stuff, there's a chance that a guy like Watson or any of these athletic freak quarterbacks can just run for another 10 yards and make you look like a moron.
Yeah, it's a challenge playing defense in the league. Shout out to the Browns' run defense, their defensive front. I pretty much called them out on every single preview show, thinking that the opposing team's going to run all over them, but they did a nice job in this game. Taven Bryan with a huge game. Chase Winovich coming off the bench. Jadeveon Clowney, all solid up front. Denzel Ward had a nice game, as you mentioned, with opposite Emerson. So the Browns' defense, sometimes at the end of the season, you finally start to see things that you expected weeks ago. The Browns defense in the second half of the season has shown much better. The
Browns are finally rounding into form, ready for this playoff run.
Yeah. I mentioned too, I feel like my body clock is still only adjusted to 17 weeks. Like my body's telling me it's wild card round right now. But there's another week.
Yeah.
It's another week to grind through.
Well, the good news is, okay, we got another week of the regular season. And, you're reaching the point where you're kind of flagging. It's Monday. You need 7 more shots in the coffee, whatever. Yeah. But remember last year, wild card weekend was insane. Could we get another one of those?
Divisional.
Well, the playoffs generally. Once the playoffs started.
Wild card was insane. I mean, but then they drag it out to a Monday night game and everything now.
Once the playoffs started, we got some insane games. So in theory, the quality of the football will bring us back. It will revitalize us.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. The gauntlet is open for drafting on Underdog Fantasy. It's a playoff best ball tournament with $1 million in total prizes and $100,000 first place prize. Just draft your team before the NFL playoffs start, so you're running out of time here, and that's it. So draft and just let them go. Drafting players will rack up a bunch of fantasy points, and advancing deep into the playoffs is key to this style of contest. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use the promo code PFF, and you'll get your first deposit up to $100 matched. This is a no-brainer. Get into the gauntlet for a little Underdog Fantasy playoff best ball tournament. The promo code is PFF. Let's go. So Washington's eliminated from the playoffs here. They were in the mix for the 7 seed. The 7 seed now is going to be between the Packers, Lions, or the Seahawks.
Yep.
So there you go. Let's go Bucks 30, Panthers 24. The battle for the NFC South. The Bucks have clinched the NFC South with their 8-8 record. Panthers fall to 6-10. There was a point, though. The Panthers were less than a quarter away from being in the driver's seat. They wouldn't have clinched the division, but they would have been controlling their own destiny in the NFC South. But the Bucs go 20 straight points in the fourth quarter to get up. It still got a little crazy at the end. It took one of the best plays you'll ever see from a punter, and but ultimately this was Tom Brady and Mike Evans just taking over for the first time all season, starting to a little flashback to what they had done in 20 and 21.
Yeah, we were very close to 3 teams in this division. I think only 3, right? Atlanta were done. 3 teams in this division being alive in the final week of the season to take the division crown, each of whom would take it with a losing record, rather. And then finally, Tampa Bay gets their crap together for long enough to just eke out a win against Carolina, against the Sam Darnold-led Carolina Panthers team that have already fired their coach weeks ago, and finally haul themselves over the finish line to host a playoff game.
Yeah, the Panthers got up 14-0. They had 2 separate 10-point leads in this game. They're up 14-0 early. Sam Darnold, I mentioned on the preview show, I think his arm looks great. He's zipping it around. He had a beautiful touchdown to Tommy Tremble. DJ Moore won at the catch point for a 24-yarder.
DJ Moore had a great game.
DJ Moore was great at the catch point, right? Don't you think of DJ Moore as like, hey, he's this really good route runner and all that stuff? I don't want to say mossed, you don't want to overuse that, but he won at the catch point against Jamel Dean on a prayer, had the 24-yard touchdown. Moore had an excellent game, but every time the Bucs fell behind, Brady hit Evans for a deep ball, 63-yarder in the second quarter, a 57-yarder early fourth quarter, and then a 30-yarder that gave the Bucs the lead for the first time in the fourth quarter. That was a huge part of the game. This was by far Brady's best game, by far Evans' best game, and the Bucs offense from start to finish, easily their best game. They missed a couple field goals in there too. They easily could have put up a lot more points. Was the first time all season the Bucs looked anything like the 2020 and 21 versions that were, maybe the best offensive team in the league.
Yeah, and it showed that theoretically it's still there. Like this thing can work. Yeah. As much as it seems absurd that this team is going to host a playoff game and, go up against a good wild card team, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they show up and have a game like that offensively and beat somebody. The potential is still there. It's just we had not seen any real suggestion that it was going to come together.
It was an interesting one too because last week Carolina ran like crazy. Neither running game was effective in this one. Both run defenses were much better. It really was Sam Darnold trying to go blow for blow with Brady. Early on it was working. There was a weird turnover just before the half where the ball was snapped early and Darnold fumbled it, and the Bucs were essentially gifted an extra 3 points, and then it gets to the end of the game, right? So the Panthers were up 11 in the fourth. Before you know it, like I said, Bucs score 20 straight points. They're up 9, so the Bucs are in control of the game. The Panthers driving in the fourth quarter, and by the way, I just want to reiterate, Greg Olsen, unbelievable again, as far as just his color commentary and everything. Greg Olsen's just fantastic, but he highlighted a whole bunch of stuff on the fly in this game.
Well, he had to be on his game because he's going up against a successor here, Can't roll into it.
With Tom Brady taking his number one spot.
It's
Greg Olsen should be the number one man for Fox for
it's
the
like
foreseeable future.
Nothing motivates a quarterback more than drafting his replacement. Well, Greg Olsen was going to cover the game of the guy who's going to be his replacement in the booth.
Yeah, so he's really informative. He's quick. I mean, you don't realize how quick it is when you're doing color and being able to analyze things. I think he was great. But he did highlight, look, the Panthers they're down 9, and they kicked, a 50-yard field goal, 49-yard field goal to cut the deficit to 6, and then try to get the onside kick. Didn't get it, but they still had a chance to get the ball back. They stopped the Bucs on 3 plays. So what's happening here is the Bucs are going to punt, presumably put the Panthers at about the 10-yard line, and that's it, right? The Panthers have about 30 seconds, no timeouts, to go the length of the field for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. What's the punter's name? I don't know.
I was about to say,
Jake
you had
Camarda.
this whole thing set up to finally praise a punter, a special teams guy. There's like a couple of people.
It's
listen,
rookie Jake Camarda.
big punter fans keep lamenting the lack of punter coverage on this show, and you set it up perfectly to finally praise one of these punters,
I'm
and
another-
you didn't even know his name.
I'm another cup of coffee away. I would have had it. Jake Camarda. I know, it's the rookie. So there's it almost looked like Camarda was 2 yards deeper than he should have been. The long snap short hops him. So this is potential disaster for the Bucs, right? Their division title might come down to this bad long snap. It's a low snap. Camarda picks it up. Now, if he gets tackled, the Panthers are going to be in Bucs territory, and all they need is a touchdown with about 30 seconds left. More than probably close to a minute. They got all this time left to score a touchdown. Camarda picks it up, scrambles, sprints to the sideline, shows a little burst in speed, and barely gets the punt off. Now, the punt itself was incredible. It rolls to about the 10-yard line, 5-yard line, whatever it was. But it's illegal, right? Because this isn't college. There's illegal man downfield, right, outside of the gunners in the NFL. Once again, Olsen mentions this right away, right? So what Camarda did was essentially earned the penalty. He earns the illegal man downfield, which is about 30 yards, 40 yards better than just getting tackled or throwing it away or anything else.
Well, he basically earns a do-over minus 5 yards.
Yes, right? So the penalty is 5 yards so that he can actually, give the long snapper another chance, punt the ball, and get the Panthers inside the 10 or 15-yard line, which they eventually did. So this was actually one of the most amazing plays you'll see from a punter as Camarda just scrambles out and saves, basically, earns a penalty to save about 40, 45 yards of field position. It still would have been tough for the Panthers to win, but, that would have been – they had almost zero chance when it came once the punt was –
Well, then they finally, they don't get anywhere, and they run the, crazy lateral play at the end, which actually had a chance. They got, Chuba Hubbard into space. Well, it had a chance, but the chance actually was before that. So they got, I think Chuba Hubbard starts working up the sideline, ends up puts on a burst of speed, which takes him past the 1 second level player. And now he's into the secondary where obviously there's a wall of defenders that have set up specifically to stop this. But they had worked the narrow side to the point where if there had been, a little bit of rugby knowledge in the group, you actually could have manufactured a 2-on-1 down the blind side, down the short side against that one defender and had a real chance to break that down the sideline. Instead, Hubbard works towards space, goes to the middle of the field where all the space is, but also all of the, nobody else is there. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, the only guy there left to pitch the ball to is an offensive lineman, and that's usually where the crazy woo-woo play ends, which is basically what happened. But
somebody's going to hire you as a consultant at some point.
But had he stayed on the blind side, right? There's 2 defenders. He's got 1 blocker out in front of him to take one of them out, and he has a support player up on his inside. So now you got a 2-on-1. If you can draw that last defender and then pop the ball outside of you, that guy's gone.
Would you put in all your skill players as offensive linemen?
Yeah, I would think about it.
Yeah. That hasn't happened yet.
Because it's not like most of the time on these plays, either the ball's coming out quickly or the quarterback is running anyway. It's not like the offensive linemen are locking down the 3-man rush as it is. So why not replace them with tight ends and
replace them with skill position players? Even the quarterback, right? Unless you have an athletic quarterback.
Honestly, this should be a special teams play. The hands team should run this with the quarterback.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
That's what it should be, as opposed to an offensive play where you're just
see that in
the
future of the NFL here, man. Especially with you consulting.
Yeah. Why? Every time I watch the Bucs play, I come away with the question: why is Vita Vea not unblockable?
Yeah.
Because every win he has, right, is the same. There's some kind of initial whatever, and then he grabs the dude in front of him and just throws him out of the way, right? The guy who usually is 300-plus pounds. There was one win he had where he tossed Bradley Bozeman. It was like you blocking Harry, right? You just deciding, all right, I've done I've done with this fake thing now, and woof, just launch the child out of the way, right? Only Vita Vea is doing that to 300-plus pound offensive linemen. And, like, if you can do that regularly, why not just do it every play? Like, what's the preamble? Just don't wait. Grab the guy in front of you and throw him out of your way and go get the quarterback or the running back, whatever it is. Stop reading. Don't read and react. Just grab, toss, make play. That order every time. And do it until you're tired. And then come to the sideline. Get a rest. Have a banana, whatever you want to do. Like, drink a coffee. And then get back out there.
Go toss a guy again.
Right.
I do wonder about that.
Why
Vea's wins are really impressive.
Why does it only show up every now and again?
Why couldn't Brady and Evans connect on a deep ball until week 17 of the season? I don't know.
Well, because people kept, getting penalties and taking them off the board.
Yeah, I kept waiting for those. Right, because they did hit a deep ball against the 49ers a few weeks ago, and there was a flag on the play.
But it does feel
a flag to negate them.
That if you're that freaking dominant, just physically, versus the guys trying to block you, it really should show up more than it does for him. And we've seen it. Like last year, he was doing that all the time.
Yeah.
And then this year, it's like every now and again he does it. Why? I don't understand. If you're capable of doing that as easily as you are, why does it not happen way more often?
So the Bucs win. They clinch the NFC South. They're going to play essentially a meaningless game against the Falcons next week. There'll be debates about resting people and all that stuff. They'll host a playoff game. The most likely scenario is hosting against the Dallas Cowboys, but it still could be the Eagles. It could be, it's either the Eagles or the Cowboys.
There are very few things more Dallas than looking this good down the stretch, rolling into a playoff game against what could be a losing record Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, and losing.
Just saying, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin combined for 327 receiving yards yesterday. Brady to Evans and Godwin was back. Russell Gage has looked back. I mean, it's only one game, but the fourth quarter of Arizona plus this game, the Bucs offense looks back for 5 quarters. We'll see if they can carry that into the playoffs. Panthers-wise, man, I wonder if they have a decision to make on Darnold. He's looked, I think, really good overall.
Stop it.
What?
You think the decision
for like a year? Bridge guy. He could be their bridge guy.
Okay.
Sam's playing well, running the ball well.
All right.
What are your alternatives? Give me alternatives.
I'm not entertaining this
Don't say anything else.
I'm not entertaining this conversation.
We'll talk about it throughout the offseason. Kansas City Chiefs 27, Denver Broncos 24. The Chiefs moved to 13-3, and they still have a shot at that number 1 seed, depending on tonight's game, Bills and Bengals. Broncos, another one where they hung tough with the Chiefs. I feel like another game where the Chiefs were a little self-inflicted. Mahomes with I have to highlight all Mahomes' mistakes. That's what I was.
I thought you agreed not to do that anymore.
Well, when he makes them, red zone interception. Feels like a lot of his interceptions are in the red zone this year. Throws one right to Justin Simmons. Not a great play there, but look, the Chiefs' offense was still very good in this game. They end up pulling away in the fourth quarter. They were actually trailing going into the fourth quarter, at least for a play. And then they pulled away. And Broncos did have a bit of a comeback attempt, right? Russell Wilson with the 4-yard touchdown. I know you've got something to say about that. 75-yard drive, not plays, in the fourth quarter. And then they still had a chance. It was 4th and 2 with the game on the line, and it looked like the Broncos just snapped the ball early because a little Frank Clark shift baited them, thinking he was offsides. They snap it early, and poor Russ is sitting there trying to get rid of it, and didn't work. Chiefs win and have a chance to get that number 1 seed if the Bills lose.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes obviously got a couple of mistakes in this game, but man, I thought he made some absolutely ridiculous passes in this game, including some that were like incompletions. Like some of his incompletions were some of the best throws like you're going to see a player make. He's just capable of things that other players aren't. And it's funny, the certain plays where it shows up, where he's just on the move, puts a pass in. You're like, that shouldn't be possible to fit the ball into that window. Or even to attempt that pass is silly, and yet he's able to put those regularly where they should be at an absolutely absurd level.
The throw he made to Justin Watson just before the half, right? They had, 10 seconds, 8 seconds. Yeah. Another one of those. The Chiefs have a fraction of time, and can they get into field goal range?
Yeah,
and he just throws it early to this spot directly along the sideline where Watson can slide and make a catch. They set up a field goal. Butker misses it by a mile, but just incredible that they even had that opportunity.
Yeah, like missed field goal, so it didn't end up accounting. But the Chiefs have shown so many times in the last few seasons that if you give them 10 seconds, if you give them double-digit seconds, even if they need to go 20 yards, they can do it. Like, they can make those ridiculous chunk plays easily. Like, you can set up. It turns out it's actually a lot more difficult than NFL teams thought it was, or at least when you're playing Mahomes it is, to set up in a way that all you got to do is take away a 20-yard gain. Right? That feels like a very easy defensive ask. All you got to do is give up anything 20-plus yards. Just don't do that, and you win. And yet every time Kansas City gets given that opportunity, okay, you got to get 20 yards, you got 10 seconds to work with, what are you going to call? They find plays. Yeah. It's insane.
Well, they'll do a quick hitter to Kelsey where he'll pick up yards after the catch. They'll do a play like this where Mahomes just throws it to a spot and receiver gets there. Really incredible. The other part is Kadarius Toney. There's a back shoulder to Kadarius Toney, but he had 71 yards on on 4 catches. All 4 of his targets were caught. And, Toney, once again, just looks like this weapon that's going to show up in the playoffs when you don't get as much from a Juju Smith-Schuster in this game or can't really connect with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Like, oh, by the way, we picked up Kadarius Toney for pennies on the dollar, and that dude is tough to tackle. Him and Jerick McKinnon, those were the top 2 receivers for the Chiefs. Both guys crazy shifty in space. So think about defending the Chiefs. And, yeah, I know they don't have Tyreek Hill this year, and that felt like a big loss. But now, defending the Chiefs, you still have Kelsey, who is uncoverable and all that fun stuff. But then you have Kadarius Toney and Jerick McKinnon. You've got these incredible space players, quickness, speed, difficult to tackle. That's what the Chiefs are doing, and they're not throwing the ball downfield as much. They've changed their offense, and it's like, here, tackle all these guys. Make these plays. And Mahomes is going to make his special plays. They're still so difficult to defend. And then Pacheco is going to run with power. I mean, they're still so difficult to defend with just I don't want to say slightly different style of players, but just without the elite Tyreek Hill speed, just more shifty players than straight line speed type of players.
Yeah, so Mahomes' second incompletion of the game is one of the most insane plays that I've seen from him. They're in the red zone. It's not even particularly a lot of pressure, but he does that standard Mahomes thing of bounce out of the bottom of the pocket, start scrambling into open space. And then Juju Smith-Schuster is running just a shallow drag across the field. It's not open. Nothing else is open. Mahomes rolls to the left, waits for Juju to turn it back up, along the sideline into the end zone, and just on the run forwards, fires this sidearm, low trajectory bullet right past the DB into the hands of Juju, who can't come up with it at the end of it. But that is one of the most ridiculous throws you're ever going to see, and it was an incomplete pass.
Yeah, he's had a few of those in there. That's why, when he was rolling left and he throws the interception to Justin Simmons, yeah, that pass to Juju is ridiculous. When he throws the interception to Justin Simmons in the end zone, I'm just amazed that stuff doesn't happen more often, right? Like when you're watching Mahomes and you see some of the plays that he makes, why aren't there more mistakes in there? Why aren't there more plays where it just goes wrong? The fact that he's
because he's an alien.
Yeah, the fact that he's as safe with the ball as he is, playing that style, and avoiding all the sacks that he makes, that's what's really separated Mahomes through 5 years of his career. So, look, he has another really good game for the Chiefs. They make all the plays when needed. At the end, the Broncos, again, they hung tough. The defense hung tough as long as they could. Russ made some plays early. The big turning point was bad decision. He got completely baited by L'Jarius Sneed on the interception early fourth quarter. Chiefs had just taken the lead. Broncos were trying to come back. Russ throws the interception, and then Chiefs were up 10 before you know it.
Sneed's return on that was hilarious. It was like he just kept, as soon as contact was imminent, he pressed spin press the spin button on Madden and just tried to like spin out of the contact, and it worked like 2 or 3 times until he finally span and didn't get anywhere and just got tackled. Yeah, great play by Snead. Also, Trent McDuffie had a strip sack on a blitz that was a big
right before the half, right? Kind of took points, at least a field goal opportunity off the board.
Gave them the shot. It gave Kansas City the shot of that stupid thing, right? The
yes
20
in the Broncos
play.
Probably would have had a long field goal attempt before
Right.
the half. Yep.
And generally, like McDuffie, I think has had a quietly very good rookie season. Like it's not been as flashy as Sauce Gardner. Other players have had more kind of notable plays, and he missed a chunk of it with injury. But he's actually just quietly been very good, and they've leaned on him a lot. Like for a guy that missed a lot of time and as a rookie corner, as soon as he's been healthy, they plugged him right in as a starter and given him some pretty tough assignments, and he's done pretty well.
All right, so as I mentioned, Kansas City wins. They're watching very closely tonight's game, Bills and Bengals, because if the Bills lose, Chiefs will get that bye if they beat the Raiders next week. Jarrett Stidham's Raiders, they're playing Saturday. They're the first game of Week 18. All right, Lions 41, Bears 10. Lions move to 8-8. Bears fall to 3-13. Man, the Lions were just unstoppable again on offense. Bears could not make a stop. It was back and forth early on, but then the Lions pulled away. This is setting up Lions-Packers potential play-in game next week. The Lions still need some help. They do need Seattle to lose to the Rams, and if they do, we don't know what the timing is going to be on all this whole thing, but the Lions have a chance to either crush the Packers' playoff hopes, or create playoff hopes of their own and get in as the 7th seed in the NFC.
Yeah, Green Bay is winning in. Green Bay controls their own destiny, having been – somebody was saying they were a 1% chance of making the playoffs at one point in the season. Like we were just one more loss, and then Rodgers can hang them up. We get to see what Jordan Love brings to the table for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And we've got some interesting discussions. Rodgers like, no, I'm going to keep going until we're mathematically eliminated. It turns out, yeah, for good reason. Because
Which
you're
will not happen. Yeah.
So Green Bay, after that, actually controls their own destiny. They win and they're in. Detroit doesn't. They still need help because they blew it a week ago. 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, they lost to Carolina. So that, I think, is potentially important when you get to where they're putting that game next week. Like the Lions might not actually have anything to play for other than ruining Green Bay's day. Yeah, Chicago's defense is terrible. So it made sense that Detroit was going to put up a ton of points and that they were going to struggle to stop them, blah, blah, blah. Early in the game, it looked like it was going to be a shootout, a back and forth. The Bears, you and your, let's dial back the Justin Fields running stuff. Let's teach him how to pass the ball. Not only are the Bears ignoring you, they're leaning even more into the Justin Fields thing.
Doesn't mean they're right.
They line up with this amazing play where another short yardage wrinkle instead of they do that thing where they motion the tight end right under center to do the fake, to do the sneak, because you don't want to risk the quarterback. So instead, you have the tight end take the ball, turn and pitch it to the quarterback who's still standing in the shotgun and have him just run it off the edge. And Detroit actually had it defended pretty well. I think it was Jeffrey Okudah, gets some penetration into the backfield, blocks off Justin Fields' run, and Fields just, goes Fields and makes something special happen, hurdles over the two bodies and runs for a big gain. He had 100 and something yards in the first quarter alone. He was cooking, and then it kind of goes off the rails. He has a careless fumble where he doesn't see the guy chasing him from behind, makes a couple of bad turnovers, and the Bears' offense just didn't keep pace.
Justin Fields finishes 7 of 21 passing. So he has 75 passing yards. Loses another 45 on 7 sacks. So they had 30 net passing yards. And Fields ran for 132 yards on the ground on 10 carries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they're still running him, but if he gets hurt in Week 18 in a meaningless game or in this game in Week 17, what's the point?
He get hurt playing standard drop bank passer in the pocket.
He could. He absolutely could. Fields throws an interception to cover 2 corner Aiden Hutchinson, too, just before the half. Aiden Hutchinson now has 3 interceptions on the season. He's a defensive lineman. Is that going to affect your vote as a voter this year for Defensive Rookie of the Year? Is someone going to look at Defensive Rookie of the Year? Because what, does Sauce still only have 2 or whatever it is? Or 0, whatever he has. All I know is Hutchinson has the interceptions.
Yes. This one was weird. Did you see where he lined up on the play?
He was cover 2.
He lined up like
2
out, basically hiding at the sideline.
It was a cover 2 corner.
To the point where I think Fields genuinely didn't even know he was there. Like, it wasn't like he lurked in his blind spot and you didn't see him. I think he was so far to the sideline that Fields actually wasn't aware that there was a defender there. And then he just sort of jumps in front of it and makes the play. Okay, yeah, look, Aiden Hutchinson has had a pretty good rookie year. And it would be a travesty if he won Rookie of the Year over Sauce Gardner, because he's the only player in the NFL to have 5 sacks and 3 interceptions, which I saw bandied about yesterday.
Just a couple random.
Right. It's like, okay, yes.
Totals.
Great. That's a unique statistic that he owns this year.
It's going to influence somebody, Sam. It's going to influence
not,
somebody.
Like, it doesn't.
Those 8 plays.
It doesn't offset the 500 plays where Sauce Gardner's been locking down his receiver as a number 1 corner and arguably the best corner in the entire league, just because, like one of those plays, right? If one of those interceptions doesn't happen, now he no longer has that statistic. Are you telling me that one play is the difference here? Like, it's just silly.
A lot of what ifs there, Sam. Jared Goff, another good solid game. They're turning Brock Wright into a touchdown machine. Another 2 scores there. Jamison Williams had a 40-yard end around in there.
He looks so good.
So fast, right? I mean, so this is what you're seeing, the potential from the Lions offense. They haven't even tapped into Jamison Williams really as a receiver a whole lot. He only had the 1 catch on his only target. But you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have DJ Chark, Khalif Raymond. They're all still getting theirs. DeAndre Swift had an incredible touchdown run. There's a lot of speed and quickness, and talked about Kansas City's space players. A lot of good space players here for the Lions, plus Brock Wright, who's unstoppable in the red zone.
Yeah, and like James Houston made another play, right? He was the guy with the strip sack on Justin Fields. That dude has barely played this season and yet keeps making plays whenever he's out there. And I think they've scaled up his playing time a lot. So we were talking before the season about the stable of young pass rushers that the Lions had with Aiden Hutchinson coming in. But we meant guys like, the Aquaras and, that type of player. But actually, all of a sudden, as the season's gone on, it's fellow rookie James Houston that's emerging as like a legit threat off the edge. They're scaling up his playing time, and Aiden Hutchinson has been good. The Hutchinson part might have been right, but if James Houston ends up becoming that other guy, like it's a great development for Detroit because the other guys haven't become that guy.
James Houston has 82 pass rushes. We have him with 7 sacks. I don't know if any were negated by penalties or anything, but we'll say 7. NFL also has 7. Win rate of 24%, which is awesome. Pressure rate of 18%, which is awesome. This reminds me a little bit of Cameron Wake. I got to do a little comparisons to Cameron Wake, but wasn't his the breakout season that we always talk about, or like the pre-breakout season, with like 100, 150 rushes, something like that?
Yeah.
I was in the middle of looking it up, but could be a little bit of Houston's obviously having an effect this year. He didn't see the field till week 12, but could be something that shows the future here for the Lions with Houston rushing off the edge. He was fantastic at Jackson State last year, 6th rounder, and looking good in limited time so far. So, Lions dominate. Bears defense has, they're rough. Mm-hmm. Man, Lions and Packers. I hope it means something. I'm not rooting against Seahawks, Rams, or anything, but
it just
something about the Lions, man. It
feels very weird to put those 2 games on at different times. Like, so they wait, if
there's a heavy rumor that Sunday Night Football is going to be Lions and Packers.
Yeah,
which could be meaningless for the Lions. Now, I think part of the reasoning is the NFL knows. The NFL's not looking for. Look, here's the thing. The debate. Will Brinson brought this up yesterday because he's over there like, it's not fair to do this. It's not fair to do that. Mm-hmm. Why is the NFL shuffling games? They're not shuffling games for fairness. They are shuffling games for drama and for ratings. That is why these games are moving. Not because, oh, this team doesn't know. They want to have the best, most competitive games and the most compelling stories. And Sunday Night Football, whether the Lions are in or out, is going to be a compelling storyline because Aaron Rodgers, win and you're in, and because the Fighting Dan Campbells aren't going to give up anyway, even if they're not, they want to be able to spoil the Packers' playoff opportunity. So whether it matters or not for the Lions and they're playing Sunday Night Football, the Lions are going to play. And that is a dramatic finish to the season, Lions and Packers. So the NFL's not looking for fairness when they reshuffle this schedule. They're trying to maximize their ratings. That's it. So stop thinking about, well, it's not fair to this team. The only thing they care about fairness is they don't want teams to sit their starters if they don't have to. So they play games at the same time to maximize drama, not fairness.
Yeah.
Not 100, but it's probably like 60-40 drama
there's
over
also like
competitive, fairness.
Other sports have to juggle that as well, like TV ratings when you put island games on. But also, hey, this is a sport with a competitive fairness element that we probably shouldn't have two games that have essentially equal meaning to making the postseason or not, or league position or whatever, occurring at completely different times where one team therefore has the advantage of knowing that they've already got this secured or not. Like, if it was any other sport, those two games would happen at the same time so that neither one had an advantage.
Yeah, ideally, that would be great. Because the other game they're talking about is Bengals-Ravens being Sunday Night Football for the division, but it's only for the division if the Bengals lose tonight. So there's some what-ifs there. I did quickly look up Cameron Wake. His 2009 season, 135 pass rushes with a 92 pass rush grade. So similar sample size, similar production, and that essentially foretold Cameron Wake being one of the best pass rushers in the NFL for the next 10 seasons. So not saying James Houston's exactly going to be that guy.
Sounds like that's what you're saying.
But that's what his breakout reminds me of here, Sam. All right, the other two 1 o'clock games we're going to touch on. We have 3 minutes to cover these two games. That's my self-imposed rule here. Atlanta 20, Arizona 19. Falcons move to 6-10. Cardinals fall to 4-12. This game meant far more for NFL draft position than anything else. Both teams obviously eliminated. David Blau got the start for Arizona. The Cardinals move up to number 4 in the draft order, and the Falcons fall to 7.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. When was it you first learned that David Blau was on the Arizona Cardinals roster?
When he was announced as the starter on Friday.
Okay. 3 players for the Arizona Cardinals saw double-digit targets in this game. Name them.
No, I didn't watch much of this game. No?
You're just not going to do it.
No.
Marquise Brown,
I know
Greg
Hopkins didn't
Dortch,
play.
and Trey McBride. Breakout Trey McBride game. 10 targets, 7 catches, 78 yards.
Good for McBride. He was supposed to be the best tight end in the draft. Still could be.
Yeah, and looked like it. I mean, this was a game where they put him out there, and he absolutely looked like that. He had a great game.
Leave it to David Blau to unlock Trey McBride's potential.
Exactly.
I watched a little Desmond Ridder. He was solid. Tyler Algier had some nice runs in there as well.
I think it was Ritter's best game, which still wasn't great. Algier looks absolutely legit. Like, that Falcons run game is still very good. I think they rushed for like 130-something yards as a team.
126. 132.
They looked really good. J.J. Watt had a sack in his sort of farewell go-around the last few weeks. Didn't do an awful lot else, but the sack, that's the important thing. I got to get up that list, the all-time rankings.
Where does he rank?
Pretty high, right? I mean, he put himself pretty high just after like 5 years. So even with the injuries, he still has to rank reasonably high on that list.
When did they start sacks? 1984?
82?
82. Yeah, I think so. What the heck?
What are you doing?
By player. I'm looking it up.
Anyway, that's about all that happened in this game.
Where's J.J. Watt? Not high enough.
He cleared 100, though, right? That was his...
He's got 112 and a half, apparently.
Yeah. There you go.
The key half sack.
Key half.
Desmond Ridder, I think maybe his best throw was a back shoulder to Cordero Patterson in the end zone that fell incomplete. Good little zip on that one. Anything else on this game?
No.
Great. I have even less on Jacksonville 31, Houston Texans 3. The game mattered not for the Jags. Trevor Lawrence ended up coming out for C.J. Beathard at one point. Travis Etienne breaks away for long touchdown. That was a big play. And that was pretty much it. An insurmountable lead once the Jags hit 7 in this one. 31-3 was the final. Davis Mills not so hot for the Texans. But the Jags really just gearing up for next week.
Yeah. Houston's run defense, every time you watch it, it's like, how is this not the worst run defense in NFL history? They just give up giant plays left, right, and center to everybody. And yet somehow there must be games where they don't, because it just gets destroyed every time you're watching it.
I thought I had a... Sorry.
What?
Well, nothing.
Okay.
Yeah. So Houston had a chance of losing the number 1 overall pick, but they're holding on tight. And on a weekend where Bryce Young tore it up in the Sugar Bowl against Kansas State, Bryce Young, our guy Mike Renner says, that's it, I'm done debating. Bryce Young's the number 1 overall pick. From what I've seen so far, I'd have to agree. I think Bryce Young would be the play here for Houston. Obviously, there's a lot to play out. You know, Will Levis's official hand size is pending.
It's going to be monstrous.
You had C.J. Stroud, who had, tapered off a little bit, I think, in those discussions, just crush it on Saturday night in a loss to Georgia in the college football playoff. But C.J. Stroud may be putting himself back into that conversation near the top of the draft. But either way, Houston's going to be selecting a quarterback, and I can't wait to sit here and discuss it and debate it for the next few months.
That was also the Alabama game. It was the sort of advertisement for Bill O'Brien to rescue the New England offense,
Yeah, it's funny because I heard Patriots reporter Mike Reese talk about that on the radio the other day, basically saying it's funny because there's all these rumors, but the one person nobody's actually spoken to or has any idea what he's thinking is Bill Belichick. Like, nobody actually knows. So this is really people just kind of inferring Patriots offense is a hot mess. Mm-hmm. Matt Patricia probably shouldn't be offensive coordinator next year. Bill O'Brien has gone through the Nick Saban, Alabama career rejuvenation program. The next step that's logical is going back to New England, where he was 10 plus years ago before he went to Penn State.
I mean, he's also done his own coaching rehabilitation program. Like, that's why they're in the mess they are in the first place, right? Well, let's bring back Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. Let's have them run the offense this time. That'll get them back on their feet. Yeah.
Belichick's pulling a Nick Saban there.
Right.
Anyway, if you're a Jags fan and you tuned into this segment, we'll have much more on the Jags on Thursday as we preview their game against the Tennessee Titans. The also very, very important here. Jags Equipment at Jags Equipment has come out, and they put out a poll. They wanted Jaguars fans to decide what they're wearing for the game,
right?
Which is next Saturday night in prime time. Teal combo, teal and black and teal, white, what do you want to? And it's like, why? If you are not wearing the 1996 Jags uniforms, you're just losing. If you're not wearing the Mark Brunell era Jags jerseys from now until forever. Yes.
They don't even have
They never should have changed. They never should have changed.
But they did.
They don't even 7 years into the Jags history, they're over there flipping uniforms, and there was no need for it. No need for it.
They don't even have that as a throwback option, right? They're not even.
You can't actually use it. I'm just like, right. That would be my vote.
But the Patriots have Pat Patriot to get up, right?
Right.
The Jags don't have that.
No, because it's all predetermined before the year. But they're probably right around. They probably will wait till 2026 or something, like the 30-year anniversary.
Right. How old does the franchise need to be before you can have a throwback uniform?
I mean, I think once you have like 7 uniforms in between those two. Right? The Brunell era Jags, they never wore teal pants or anything like that. That's absurd.
Of course.
You wear a teal top and white pants, and it was the best combination of teal with the Jag on them. I mean, that should be the uniform.
Yeah.
I spent too much time.
Right, particularly because it's not an option.
I'm just saying they should make it an option.
Yeah, okay.
The NFL can adjust on the fly. Let's get to the 4 o'clock games. Seattle Seahawks 23, New York Jets 6. Jets eliminated from playoff contention, falling to 7-9. The Seahawks keeping their hopes alive. Where they win, they need a win and a Lions win next week to get into the playoffs. They're 8-8. Kenneth Walker started the game with a 60-yard run and finished with a $133. Really good job on the ground. And Mike White did not look like himself, or did he? Was off in this game for the Jets, clearly.
Yeah, this was the game that hadn't come yet for Mike White. remember like the last time we saw him, he flashed, he looked impressive, and then he played that Buffalo game. That's like, yeah, okay, that's the end of that. And then he came back again, and he hadn't had the Buffalo game again. He had avoided playing badly, and, maybe you were like, well, that was just Buffalo's defense. They got a great defense. But right as you're, like, asking the question, there was a really nice ball from Mike White early in the game. You're like, can Mike White actually win himself a starting job with the last couple of weeks?
Like, one throw does kind of, like, trigger that in your mind, right?
But, well,
it was beautiful.
One throw, because of what they've dealt with Zach Wilson, because of the fact that the team is in a good position overall, and because of the fact that Mike White hadn't yet had that Buffalo game again, you're like, well, if he has, 2 more games to end the season that look good with those types of throws where the offense is looking different when he's there, I mean, like, there's an argument. There's a conversation to be had. The Sam Darnold conversation that you seem so eager to jump back into. Like, that would absolutely be live for Mike White. And then no sooner has that thought crossed your mind than he just, like, slings the ball to Quandre Diggs the way Brock Purdy did a couple of weeks ago, only this time Diggs caught it. And you're like, oh, okay. And then that was the start of the worst game we've seen from Mike White since that Buffalo game.
Yeah, I think from a Mike White perspective, it's easy to say, yeah, he's dealing with the rib injury, and he's clearly not the right guy, or not the same, but that decision in particular was, like, under pressure, and a heave into double coverage.
Yeah.
He had another one that he got away with, and then another interception later. So 2 interceptions, 3 turnover-worthy plays for Mike White. There's a few drops in there as well, but clearly not the same guy.
And I can buy that one in particular was rib influenced. When you look at how he threw that, it kind of looked. You might be reading too much into this because of what he's dealing with.
The first interception?
Yeah, but when you watch him throw that, it looked like a guy that was like, my ribs. You know what I mean? Like, was sort of hunched over, dealing with like.
Oh yeah, the ball did not come out of his hand great, but the decision was horrible.
Yes, it's like, but even if a fully healthy Mike White with working ribs fires that in tighter, faster, harder, it's still a bad decision that gets picked off most of the time. Like, that's the problem.
Yeah, I also thought that the Jets offensive line would look, they're not great, and they've been so hurt this year, but the Seahawks pass rush hasn't been great, but White did also feel like he just takes a ton of hits, right? Like the joke I always make about Nick Foles, where it feels like every single throw is him getting crushed. Like, Mike White was getting rolled up on and hitting the ribs again. I mean, he just gets hit a ton. So I thought Seattle's defense might be, a good matchup for this Jets offense to get back on track. The complete opposite happened. So other than the run game, I don't think Seattle was that great offensively either. I mean, it was really just a defensive battle where Mike White's turnovers proved to be the biggest difference in the game.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the Jets because I think if Mike White had been the starter all year, they'd probably make the playoffs. Even with, Zach Wilson for a period of time and Joe Flacco games, like, they still.
Because all you're saying is there's a couple. Well, look, what was Zach Wilson? 5-2, 5-3 as a starter. You're just talking about flipping one of those games.
Yeah. And it feels like this was a team that should have made the playoffs. They just had a quarterback situation that ended up undoing them overall.
Geno Smith still a little hit or miss in this game. Always has his couple really nice throws in there, but he missed a bunch as well. Got sacked 4 times. He was under heavy heat too. I mean, we talk about on the preview show, we talked about the Seattle offensive line and their regression. They're looking at a pass block grade in the 30s right now, pending review. Geno Smith was under heavy heat in this one as well. They still made, managed
their offensive line much better in the run down the stretch.
Much better in the run game, but from like a pass blocking standpoint, they were rough.
Every 4 out of the 5 starters are going to have pretty wretched PFF pass blocking grades for this game. Like, their offensive line has absolutely fallen to ribbons down the run-in.
And we've seen them struggle against the Niners. If the Seahawks do sneak into the playoffs, we're talking about a game against the Niners or against who else would be the 2 seed potentially? Some team with a good pass rush, because it's like the Eagles, Cowboys, Niners.
The Vikings can make it. The Niners can make it.
Vikings can still get a 2 seed here?
Yes.
So I think Seattle fans are rooting for a Vikings matchup in round 1 potentially. Any other thoughts on this one? It just felt like the Jets. I mean, now that the Jets are out, do you throw Zach Wilson back in there next week, or is he actually done for the Jets?
I mean, I think he's done. I don't know. I don't think you learn anything from Zach Wilson playing in the final week of the season.
No, I don't think you learn anything, but it's just like another
So what's the point?
Another game of reps in case he's still on your team next year. If you've moved on especially if Mike White is still banged up and hurt, keep him safe. Keep Mike White safe heading to the offseason.
Got to keep Mike White safe.
All right, the San Francisco 49ers 37, Las Vegas Raiders 34. The final in overtime. Jarrett Stidham gets the start for the Raiders, and man, he was dealing early on. We started to see the Raiders offense, Darren Waller with an early touchdown, Devontae Adams with another incredible game, some incredible catches in there. But the Niners offense and Brock Purdy, I did on the preview show, I said, hey, can Brock Purdy, make one of those fourth quarter comebacks? Jimmy Garoppolo has been pretty good in late game situations when needed, and I was impressed with Purdy. A lot of big throws on the final drive that led to a missed field goal in regulation, but then Stidham interception in overtime set the Niners up for a game-winning field goal, and they come away with the victory. They move to 12-4, and there's still a path for the 49ers to get the number 1 seed and a bye because of the Eagles starting to lose.
Yeah, who would have thought that Brock Purdy versus Jarrett Stidham would be one of the best quarterback matchups of the week? Both those guys, I thought, looked really good. And I was impressed by both of them. Two Raiders quarterbacks since, I think, like the early 90s or something, have led a touchdown drive on their first drive of their first start. Jarrett Stidham and
Jamarcus Russell.
No, Matt McGloin.
Oh, McGloin. Oh, that's right. McGloin had that stretch, right?
So it's a data point that isn't necessarily the most indicative thing in the world.
It's just another Hall of Fame credential.
Right. But Stidham looked really good. I thought he made a bunch of incredible plays. One of them was not quite a Mahomesian play, but, gets out of trouble.
Any scramble to your left where you throw it under pressure, it's like, that's Mahomes.
But this one, it wasn't doing it under pressure that was the most impressive thing. It was how long he held the ball, knowing the pressure was coming, to give his guy a chance to uncover, to then fire it into the open guy for a touchdown. Early in the third quarter, he rolls to the left. He knows there's a guy bearing down on him, and he had the patience and the discipline to just hold, finally gets rid of it, touchdown. I thought he looked great in this game.
He did. I mean, Of
course he should, as the former top recruit in the nation.
Yeah, there was a point in his career where he looked fantastic. Early in his career. Looked fantastic.
Kevin Clark, I think, tweeted what that recruiting class looked like in terms of quarterbacks. It's a pretty wild list.
So what would that have been? 2015?
Sure.
Oh, was Stidham? Stidham was one of my elite 11 guys.
Stidham, number 1. Number 2, Kyler Murray. Number 3,
elite 11 class.
Brandon Wimbush. Juwan Jennings, the receiver, was number 5. Darnold, 6. Joe Burrow, 7. Lamar Jackson, 9. Weird class.
I was with Trent Dilfer at Elite 11 for those kids when they were there. We were grading their practices at the opening at Elite 11. Yeah, Stidham was there. Kyler. Josh Rosen was in that class, wasn't he?
Yep.
Rosen and Darnold were both there.
Rosen was the number 1 pro-style quarterback from that class.
Yeah.
Turns out, just looking at that list, you don't want a pro-style quarterback anymore.
The winner that year, that wasn't Shane Buechele's year. He was the next year. The winner of Elite 11, who the heck was it? Oh, it was Shea Patterson, I believe. I think he was in there. Anyway, Stidham looked pretty good in this. Remember, 4th-round pick by the Patriots. Josh McDaniels was there, and I did make the joke. Maybe it was Jarrett Stidham's time. It wasn't Derek Carr getting demoted. It was Stidham getting elevated. Do you think the Raiders are going to, give Stidham a look?
They are giving him a look.
More than 2 games. For next year.
No.
Okay.
Look, this was a great game. This was a surprising performance from Jarrett Stidham, but we know that can happen. Remember, we were however many weeks away from P.J. Walker looking like the best quarterback in the NFL against the Bucs, right? That happens every now and again. I don't think
Matt Flynn had a 6-touchdown game.
Yeah, although I don't think he actually necessarily played that well in that game. But anyway,
he had a 6-touchdown game.
I don't think you we know that wild single-game performances can happen from quarterbacks. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. But this was a really impressive performance from Stidham, and a game from Davante Adams where he went out there and reminded people that, hey, by the way, I'm still the best receiver in the game.
So he had the scramble pass that you're talking about was to Davante Adams, ran away from the defense for a touchdown. He had a back shoulder, which was a great throw and catch, both ends. And then Adams had that ridiculous diving catch on the comeback drive at the end of regulation for, 60 yards? And that's where I want to hand it to Stidham, right? At the end of the game, Brock Purdy leads a touchdown drive to go up 7, and then Stidham comes right back. And in a lot of those situations, they had a penalty on the first play. It was like 2nd and 20 or 1st and 20. And a lot of those times, we always talk about you start with the easy pass, He just started chucking it deep. Davante Adams with a 60-yard diving catch, which I thought they might overturn because the ball touched the ground. But incredible catch there. Next play, Stidham's throwing it up the seam. Fred Warner with a pass interference in the end zone. Before you know it, the Raiders are at the 1-yard line, and Josh Jacobs just walks in for the game-tying touchdown. And I thought Stidham's aggressiveness in those situations, right? Like early in the game, there was the play action to Waller for the touchdown. It felt like there was a lot of control with the Raiders offense. They put him in position to succeed. But you have the scramble touchdown for Adams, the back shoulder to Adams, chucking it deep to Adams, where he makes the diving play. There was some aggressiveness to Stidham and some really nice throws that allowed for the explosive offense that the Raiders showed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from him. I thought he had a great game and made some really impressive plays, and some plays that you don't necessarily expect that type of quarterback to make, as did Brock Purdy. I think both those guys looked dramatically better than they have any right to be given their backgrounds. You know, Purdy being Mr. Irrelevant and a rookie, Stidham being a guy that's been like buried on everybody's depth charts and not really trusted to be a starter at any point so far in his NFL career. They both look fantastic. Yeah,
I want to give Purdy credit as well, yes, for sure, because this was the first game where the Niners were behind at the half. There were some ebbs and flows in the second half where the Niners, I mean, they did get a tipped interception that kind of put them, gave them a short field. But look, Purdy in a comeback situation made a bunch of key throws.
He did. That being said, these are always funny how one play can completely change the narrative. The very start of the drive at the end that ended up in the comeback to tie it, like Purdy tried to throw the game away with the first play of that drive. Now, the next play was a first down. The next play after that was a first down. That then ended in that ridiculous miracle play where he kind of gets hit and the ball flutters up and gets caught and it's away. But like play number 1, he tries to throw it away, and you're like, if that's a pick, all of a sudden you're like, wow, Purdy had one shot at getting this done, crapped his pants. That's why he's Mr. Irrelevant, you know? That guy's never going to amount to anything. When the game was on the line, Purdy wilted. It's a disaster. But the play doesn't count. It didn't happen. We do over. We pretend it didn't exist, and we move on to the next play. Right.
And then from there, though, I mean, Christian McCaffrey let him down on a drop, and then he still hits another pass. Brandon Ayuk was unstoppable on that final drive in regulation. Robbie Gould missed the field goal, but then, you know, Purdy putting them in that position was impressive.
So McCaffrey had a play on a screen that was a lot like the Jarrett Stidham thing early, when the most impressive thing about it was the patience that he exhibited. They fired a screen to McCaffrey, and like this is something that you don't tend to notice, but McCaffrey catches the screen, looks up, but then he takes a look back inside to figure out how much time he has from the chasing players to let the blocks get set up in front of him, right? If he just catches a ball and sprints forward into the defense, he gets tackled for not a particularly big gain. But he catches the ball and looks back inside to figure out how long he has to let the guys get in front of him and set up blocks so that he can actually make a bigger play out of this. Like that's the kind of thing that is why Kyle Shanahan goes after players like Christian McCaffrey. Because the difference between McCaffrey and any of the other random running backs that he drafts in the middle of the, you know, the 4th round or whatever is that it's the knowledge and the instincts to catch a screen and not just run and get what he can. It's to figure out, all right, let's figure out how much time I have right now on the fly. Like it's just a quick glance, buy himself the time, lets a blocker get out in front of him, and then he turns that into whatever that was. But that was a big gain. that I think
38
almost
yarder,
every
running through tacklers and the whole thing.
And I think almost every other running back in the league is tackled for like an 8-yard gain because they don't figure out how much time they have. They just run. They maybe try and set up the block on the fly, but they run into trouble because they haven't taken a look to figure out how much time they actually have to let those guys get out in front of them.
Purdy did a pretty nice job setting that up as well. I mean, sometimes a screen's a screen, but having patience as a quarterback as well, letting the pressure get there and then dumping it off. He did a nice job on that play as well. So McCaffrey ends up with 121 on the ground, another 72 through the air. Kittle just had the touchdown in 23 yards. That was a really nice job by Purdy as well. Roll into his left, a bunch of roll into your left plays in the NFL this week. Purdy's touchdown to Kittle was a beauty. In another game where I think you look at all of the Niners playmakers, it was another heavy McCaffrey game, but it was Ayuk in crunch time in the fourth quarter. You didn't have to go to Kittle as much in this game. Maybe he wasn't as productive in this game. You still have Deebo Samuel ready to come back probably around playoff time. So as long as Purdy either doesn't make the big mistake or gets away with them, right? He did have a couple turnover-worthy plays in this game. As long as that's the case, he's been fantastic playing point guard, as they say, distributing and getting the ball to the playmakers.
Nick Bosa shows up with a critical play in overtime to basically force the mistake. Didn't have
Bull rush on Colton Miller.
Didn't have a sack, but had a bunch of pressure, had a bunch of hits. I don't know if you can have a sort of defensive player of the year candidate game without a sack, like a signature game, but that was a case of how pressure is important. Even if you're not getting a sack, your pressure can cause interceptions.
It's also one, if you want to build the case, you have to do what you just did. It's kind of like remind the voters. And there was no sack on the stat sheet, but like this was he forced the interception in overtime that directly led to a win for the 49ers. If you can get that to stick in people's head, because it's not on the stat sheet, right? A lot of times when you're voting, you just look at the stat sheet at the end of the year and it doesn't show up there in what most people are looking at.
Yeah, we remember Aaron Donald taking over the final drive of the Super Bowl and getting sacks to end the game. I mean, this ended the game as well, essentially, just without it being a sack. It was a pressure.
The Raiders are going to play on Saturday against the Chiefs. I think Stidham's performance in this game, for whatever it's worth, we'll see if he can maintain it next week. It does make it a little bit more intriguing going up against the Chiefs, right? The Raiders took the Chiefs right to the end. On Monday Night Football, the Raiders also have the most ridiculous games all season. Crazy finishes. They're at 6-10 right now. I mentioned earlier, the Niners are 12-4, and there's a path to the number 1 seed still available for them. Mm-hmm. Let's go Packers 41, Vikings 17. Packers.
It wasn't that close.
It was not even that close. There was a late touchdown from Nick Mullins for the Vikings.
2 late touchdowns. I mean, there was a Cousins one first, and then the Nick Mullins one once they'd really given up.
Packers got up early with kick return touchdown, Keyshawn Nixon, and pick 6 by Darnell Savage. There was a point in this game where they were up 17-3, and Aaron Rodgers had 12 net passing yards. Passing yards plus a 16-yard sack. That was a key play in the game where Matt LaFleur just keeps going for it on fourth down. I mean, I don't know where he ranks from a percentage standpoint, but the last 2 weeks in particular, he is playing this like his season's on the line. Now, I don't think you should just go for fourth downs because your season's on the line. I think it helps your win probability in all games. But it's got that narrative of oh, they got nothing to lose. Just go for it. I mean, I guess. But they would go for it on fourth down. There's a 16-yard sack, and then Cousins comes back with a tipped pass, pick 6 by Darnell Savage. A massive turn of events in this game, and the Packers did not look back after that.
The start of this game was so insane, and yet it's just like a standard Minnesota Vikings game now.
Yeah.
Like, all of their games are incredibly ridiculous. Like, remember, before Green Bay started putting up a ton of points, they had a blocked punt that set Minnesota up at the Green Bay 1-yard line. Like, all of a sudden, this game started off with weird plays bouncing in Minnesota's direction. You're like, the Vikings are getting the rub here, and then they don't get in from the setup at the 1-yard line. They lose backup center Austin Schlottmann. Garrett Bradbury's been their center. Schlottmann's come in. He gets hurt. He's got a broken tibia or whichever bone it is. He's done.
Doctor.
So now they're down to the third string center. and the third string center gets owned on, I think, the 3rd and 1 play, and then the Vikings end up kicking the field goal. From the resulting kickoff was where Keyshawn Nixon goes for a touchdown. So all of a sudden, what looked like Minnesota about to bounce out to, a touchdown, they end up not getting in at all because their third string center now gets wrecked. And then when they kick it off, Green Bay runs it all the way back, which there's a couple of things that are true at the same time. Keyshawn Nixon, I think, has been a phenomenal return man this season. Every time that guy touches the ball, he looks like he's going to score. And I think it's been a matter of time before he breaks one. That being said, he was basically wide open and untouched until he was one-on-one with the kicker, because for some reason, one Vikings player in particular just went completely AWOL on this kick coverage. And Nixon had almost a free run all the way for a touchdown. But at that point, everything starts to break Green Bay's way.
Yeah, Cousins ends up with 3 interceptions. Like I said, the first one was tipped up. There's later a batted pass as the Vikings are driving. They're at the 30-yard line. Because, look, it's 17-3 Packers. As I mentioned, there was a point in the game where they're not doing much offensively. So this was very much like a Vikings game, right? Like we're going to set you up for heartbreak. We're going to set you up for this comeback. But a batted pass gets interception on the Vikings drive to try to get it within a score in the middle of the second quarter. And then by the end, it was, early fourth quarter, Cousins YOLO ball into deep coverage or whatever it was for his third interception. But yeah, it was a lot of things that ended up breaking the Packers' way, defense making some big plays. I think there's definitely some uneasy feelings with the Vikings offensive line now, their health and everything going forward.
They lost Brian O'Neill as well in this game, right tackle. So they're down to the third string center, which was, being down to the third string center generally is not a good thing. But in this particular game, the third string center seemed to be completely unable to work the snap count. They had a bunch of either false starts or delay of game because they couldn't run any kind of different snap count. If it wasn't on one, they weren't getting it right. And that's an issue, because when you don't have a great offensive line anyway, if you're now limited to only going on one or first sound, you're screwed. Teams can just time that up and you have real problems.
And the Packers offense, I don't think the Packers offense was great in this game, but they ran the ball effectively. They tried to get Christian Watson involved. He only had the one catch for 11 yards on 5 targets, but Aaron Jones going for about 8 yards a pop. A.J. Dillon has the most impressive 3.5 yards per carry games I think I've ever seen. It always feels like he's just inflicting punishment. He had 4 forced missed tackles in this game, but did get a touchdown. But the Packers do have this December playing in Green Bay vibe where they're going to run it and play with power, and they just did it in this game, including having a special team score and a pick 6. That always helps. But run game, Rodgers started to get back on track a little bit after the slow start, and Packers are winning in now.
Yeah. It was just, this was it felt a lot like the Indianapolis game from Minnesota, in that once they didn't get in from being set up at the 1-yard line, everything broke Green Bay's way. They had the first quarter of this game, they had the blocked punt. They didn't get in from the 1. Then it's a kick return touchdown. Then you have a deflected pick 6 for Minnesota. All of a sudden, this is all in the first quarter. You're now down 2 offensive linemen. The Vikings miss a kick before halftime. It gives Green Bay enough time to try and steal some points. They end up getting enough. The kick from Mason Crosby hits the crossbar and goes over. That's a 6-point swing right before halftime. Just after the half, the Vikings get a drive going, get into just either into the red zone or just outside of the red zone, and then they get a strip sack, and it's all right, that's basically the game gone away. Unlike the Indianapolis game, where once they came out of halftime and everything started to go their way and they rode that momentum, this time, the second they got a little bit of a momentum going, it all fell apart and unspooled around them. The other really fascinating thing in this game was the battle between Jair Alexander and Justin Jefferson.
The biggest pop in this game, was Jim Nantz.
Yes. Jim Nantz acted like the biggest play of the NFL season happened after the whistle had gone to end the play, where Jair Alexander hits Justin Jefferson with a gritty after breaking up a pass.
The voice inflection.
Which was like in the first quarter sometime,
The voice inflection was incredible because they were already setting up, hey, Jair Alexander, he's not, when we talk about matching, corners and receivers, it's not every single play, but this was a lot of Jair Alexander on Justin Jefferson. He was tracking him for the majority of the game. Doesn't mean they were always playing man coverage, but he was following him around quite a bit. Jefferson did not have a catch at this point. Jair breaks up a pass, whatever, gets to the gritty, and Nance's voice inflected like it was a touchdown.
Yes. That's the thing. So normally, you hear them talk about announcers, and you don't want to start off at 100 because then you got nowhere to go, right? So Nance has just finished hitting the play-by-play of a pass breakup from Jair Alexander on Justin Jefferson, which is a pretty big play in itself, and then kicks it up to like a completely new level. And he's just hit the gritty. Like, what? Okay.
What did you just say?
Exactly. That's what Jim Nantz just went out of his mind because he then hit him with the celebration. But Jair had talked this up going into the game, right? He'd done the bulletin board material stuff of saying that Justin Jefferson's first game against him was a fluke. And you're like, I don't know if you want to really be doing that. Like, this guy is looking like he's about to set an all-time record this season. He's done it against pretty much everybody. He did it against you guys the first game. Do you really want to be poking that bear before the game? Then he goes into in the first quarter, I think he had this pass breakup and starts hitting him with his own celebration. You're like, Jair Alexander is crazy, like in a great way. He is a lunatic.
You poo-pooed this when I sent you the message, but it felt a little bit like Marshawn Lattimore getting at it with Mike Evans. Just, it's different, but it's getting into a receiver's head. Because Lattimore is so physical all the time with Evans, and it just takes him out of the game. It makes Evans go crazy. And you saw Justin Jefferson in the second quarter was out of his mind. Like, he was so frustrated. And this wasn't just, again, it wasn't just Jair's playing man coverage the entire time, right? Like Cousins said after the game, and like you roll coverage at him. They just did things to take Justin Jefferson out of the game. He only ended up with 5 targets. He didn't catch the ball till the third quarter?
Yeah.
1 catch for 15 yards. So they frustrated Justin Jefferson schematically with Jair, all of that stuff. And it took him out of the game, both, from a production standpoint and maybe a little bit, mentally got him a little upset.
Well, it certainly got him pissed off. Like, Justin Jefferson lost his mind. I mean, he loses his mind, like takes off his helmet, touches an official, the one... Jerry Jeudy did it a few weeks ago where we talked about it on the podcast. Like, he was really lucky not to get ejected from the game. This wasn't as bad as that, but it's a few times actually in recent weeks where officials have had a player initiate contact, the buzzword that they use, and not thrown a flag and ejected the guy for it. Like, Justin Jefferson could have got himself tossed from this game because of that pissed off reaction. But on that play, he fell over on his break and caused an interception essentially. The Cousins threw a pick because Jefferson slipped coming out of his break. It's picked off. He kind of chases it back. And then right at the end of the play, Jair Alexander gives him a little shove in the back, probably says something to him as well because Jair Alexander is winding him up. And Jefferson at that point is like ready to blow. But the difference between the Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans thing, obviously Lattimore winds up Evans as well, but he also owns him, takes him out of the game one-on-one, just physically dominates him. I don't think Jair Alexander was dominating Justin Jefferson one-on-one. I think generally the Packers had a good game plan for stopping Justin Jefferson. There was a lot of bracket coverage. There was a lot of things that prevented the ball going his way. And then every time at the end of it, Jair Alexander is getting in his face and pissing him off. And it's like, plus, the Vikings are getting owned at this point collectively. Like, everything's going against them. So Jefferson's just kind of losing his mind.
This reminded me a little bit of when, in the playoff game, the Packers, on the other side last year, when they had Davante Adams, the Niners started to take Adams out, right? Adams had a bunch of catches early, but once the Niners took Davante Adams out, Rodgers didn't have his other guys stepping up. We'll see if anyone else can replicate this against Justin Jefferson. Look, the greatest receivers in the world have had games where they only catch 1 pass or whatever it is. It doesn't mean that there's a blueprint, right? It doesn't mean Justin Jefferson's shut down. We've solved him, right? Part of it is having Jair Alexander. Part of it is actually game planning to take those plays away, having it match with your pass rush and all that fun stuff. My point with the Vikings, though, is Adam Thielen needs to step up and TJ Hawkinson needs to step up. Like, you need the one that we said this as a positive going into this game, that Hawkinson has really come alive not only this season, but as a Viking, as a key option when teams do try to take away Justin Jefferson. You need that even more if teams continue to give him a ton of attention heading into the playoffs here.
Yeah. Alexander, though, I think is a phenomenally entertaining brand of crazy. Like, I think corners, I think being an elite corner in today's NFL, you need to be a level of nuts. Like, it doesn't work if you're entirely rational, level-headed, and honest with how things have gone. You need to always have that slant of, yeah, I got screwed here, or I was good. You need to be slightly above and beyond the realistic level of what actually happened. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, because you spend the entire time focused on the plays you gave up, or the fact that this guy actually could have beaten you for 150 yards if things had broken his way. You have to be like, no, I was locked down every play. And look, if he caught a pass, it was because something screwed me, you know? Jair Alexander is clearly nuts, but in a way that I think is probably really beneficial for a cornerback in today's league. And this was like the perfect manifestation of it. Like, you get one good play against Justin Jefferson early in the game, you get in his face, you start winding him up, and then if anything, it helps you as the game goes on, and it happens to back up what you were saying earlier in the week. You didn't get burned by it. I just think it's a great thing that somehow the guy was doing everything wrong. You trash talk the best receiver in the game over the course of the year. You gave him bulletin board material. Then you got one pass breakup on him earlier in the game and rode that to like shutting him out and the entire Vikings collapsing around you.
Yeah, I'm watching some of the plays here. So we had Jair with 20 snaps in press coverage out of there were 38 total plays that had press coverage in this game, and 20 of them were Jair Alexander in press. Again, mostly against Jefferson. And, you know, one of the early 3rd and 4s, it's Jair in press with safety help over the top, right? So again, it's not like it wasn't Jair Island or anything like that, but, you know, a guy that has the shiftiness to stick with Jefferson plus help, yeah, that's going to take him out and just say, all right, go ahead, beat us with your 2nd and 3rd best on this, in this game, and the Vikings weren't able to. So I do wonder how much you just got to throw it up to Jefferson at this point, though. And they had, like, at other times during the year, they had, right? Like, that's one of the things that made Cousins and Jefferson so special is Cousins would anticipate, throw the ball before breaks and all that stuff, and just give him a chance to make plays, and usually he's coming through.
And against Green Bay, like, remember the first game, the big question was, how did they keep winding up with Jefferson against the safety time after time after time? There's a play, sometime late in the first quarter where they have Justin Jefferson running up the middle on a post route against a split safety look, and Cousins doesn't take the shot. Now, okay, it's 3rd and 11, and, maybe you don't want to take the bomb shot on that, but that's the kind of play that they made all the way in that first game. Anytime Jefferson was hitting or attacking an open middle of the field, they were putting the ball in the air and letting him go to work against the safety. This time, Cousins passes it up, looks in the flat, and doesn't make a play.
All right, so the Vikings fall to 12-4. They can still be a 2 or a 3 seed for the playoffs. The Packers, as we mentioned, winning in against the Lions next week. 2 more games to discuss, I believe. Chargers 31, Rams 10. Chargers, pretty dominant game here for them. Austin Eckler had just 10 carries, but he goes for $122, a 72-yard touchdown in there as well. Eckler was fantastic, both, as a runner and as a receiver. Mike Williams was fantastic as a receiver, had a beautiful one-handed catch. And, man, the Chargers, they're going to get the label as the team that you don't want to play in the playoffs. They're finally healthy with Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Herbert throwing the ball pretty well. And the turn of events that happens here, with the Ravens losing on Sunday Night Football, the Chargers just moved up to the number 5 seed in the is this a coveted spot, the 5 seed, because you get to play the AFC South winner. So the Chargers move up to 5, and now you get to avoid the Bills or Bengals and you do get Bills, Bengals, or Chiefs could be 1, 2, or 3, right? So
Yeah.
that the power 3, once you get that 5 seed, you'll avoid them and play the Jags or the Titans. So big game here for the Chargers.
Yeah, it's less about, I think, who you get to play and more about who you avoid. Because let's face it, if Jacksonville wins and they end up rolling into the postseason off the back of the run-in they've had, like, Jacksonville are no joke. You know, particularly with Trevor Lawrence playing really well.
I mean, nothing's easy. I mean, it's the playoffs. It's just
Yeah,
and
but
if
like-
you're going to win something, you have to beat good teams at some point. It's just you might have an easier game rather than going through, say, the Bengals in round 1 and then go to Kansas or then go to Buffalo and then have to go to Kansas City. You know, it just makes it a little bit easier maybe going to Jacksonville.
Right,
or
but for example, I don't think anybody has any concerns whatsoever about facing Tampa Bay based off the season they've had right now. Whereas Jacksonville coming in off the run they'd have had if they win their final game, like, that's a legit team. And as Ben pointed out, they also kind of hammered the Chargers early in the year.
They did.
But there's definitely a giant drop between Buffalo, Kansas City, Cincinnati, again, particularly if Cincinnati ends up with their run-in,
Listen, Ben, Herbert was down a rib at that point in the
versus
season.
Jacksonville. Like, it's way more about not having to play one of those 3 elite teams versus getting to play Jacksonville.
I think more importantly, though, it's getting healthy, right? You're talking about the Vikings who are 12-4, and it's like, oh man, now they've got these offensive line issues and injuries and all that stuff. All of a sudden, the Chargers are getting all these players back.
I hate how big an impact injuries make on this stuff. It feels like once we get to like week 15, if all the teams in playoff consideration could just stop getting people hurt. Just right now,
Would be nice.
No more injuries. If anyone's going to get injured, let it be on a crappy team that's been eliminated already, and we don't really care. I hate that, we're talking about, who's going to win these couple of games for seeding, and blah, and you're like, well, who's going to lose their starting, left guard and center, or who's going to lose 2 corners? Like, that's what we're talking about with a lot of this stuff.
So it was Joey Bosa who made his return, right? First time since he played 25 snaps, first game since week 3 against the Jags when the Jags did crush the Chargers. But it's good to see him out there now with Khalil Mack. Kyle Van Noy had a big game there too. So you're starting to see like the depth that the Chargers thought they had going into the season before everybody got hurt. The player didn't play due to a concussion, but he should be back next week. So yeah, rounding into form, I would say. The Chargers. But I think most importantly, it is the offense, right? Herbert continues to make good decisions, give his guys opportunities to make plays, and Mike Williams, again, just to reiterate, fantastic game from him. But him, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Josh Palmer, they're tough to cover.
Yeah, they are. Neither defense in this game seemed particularly interested in stopping the run.
No, not at all. Cam Akers looked pretty good for the Rams.
Except for dropping a touchdown earlier in the
as
game.
a runner. He looked good as a good run on the ball. That's about it. Anything else?
Penetrating insight.
Thanks.
No, I mean,
the Chargers' run defense still baffles me sometimes, no matter who's in there.
They always are on the wrong side of, inviting the run is generally a pretty good thing, but you can take it too far, and they tend to take it too far.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating in the playoffs, trying to see what if they play Jacksonville or not. But if the Chargers are going to make a bit of a run and knock off one of those top teams, see how they handle things defensively. They play the Chiefs twice a year all the time. They play them tough, but they always do seem to come up just a little bit short. Even from like a coverage standpoint, trying to slow down that Chiefs offense.
But this game did, to an extent, feel a little bit like why there is that thought process that you want to invite the run as a less efficient way of offensive production, because Cam Akers was having a big game, 100-plus yards. Every time he touched the ball, he seemed to be making something reasonable happen, and yet the Rams scored 10 points, and it was like the threat of not getting a big pass completed here is actually worth it. It looks ridiculous. We're getting gashed constantly, and they're actually moving the ball reasonably easily, but they're not scoring, which is kind of the point in all this, right? Like, this, in a weird way, this game was exactly why you want to be as soft as they often appear to be against the run.
And still no real idea. Still no, like, what is Baker Mayfield? With the Rams now, through 4 games, we have a 62 grade, fresh off the plane with one of the best comebacks in NFL history. We have a 42 grade against the Packers. We have a 70 grade and a 78 passing grade on Christmas Day against a really good Broncos defense that may have quit. And then we have a grade teasing 40 here yesterday against the Chargers. So Baker Mayfield remains very inconsistent. Very inconsistent and confusing. As soon as you think he might turn a corner here, Sam, not so much.
No.
All right. So again, I think it's a big game for the Chargers. I would assume they're playing the Broncos next week, right, to finish the season, and they're going to want to play. They're going to want to play it through, and I think hold on to that 5 seed if they can. So 10-6, the Chargers move to here. Quiet 10-6. All right, let's go Sunday Night Football. I think that's every game. Let me know if I missed anything. Steelers 16, Ravens 13. A classic, old school Steelers-Ravens matchup, and then turns into Kenny Pickett fourth quarter magic again. His 3rd straight fourth quarter comeback in his last 3 attempts. After failing in the fourth quarter against the Dolphins on Sunday Night Football, 3 straight fourth quarter comebacks in as many attempts for Kenny Pickett. Steelers still alive in the playoff picture, and Mike Tomlin can still have that non-losing season despite the terrible start.
The winning season with the terrible start and the rookie/Trubisky quarterback situation is still alive for Tomlin, which is genuinely pretty incredible. Okay,
it is.
They haven't had the toughest schedule in the world, but still, that's a hell of an achievement if he pulls that off.
It's a high floor coach.
Yeah. Fascinating game because, as Chris was pointing out in the broadcast, Pittsburgh was rolling out there with like a legit 6-man defensive front. They were pulling the kind of game plans that are used at much lower levels of football to combat very one-dimensional offenses. And they were saying, we don't think there's a chance in hell that Tyler Huntley can actually pass the ball to damage us. We know you're going to roll out here and try and run the ball, and we're going to shut it down with a 6-man front.
Yeah.
And it was working.
It was there was like 4 possessions total in the first half. It was fascinating to watch. What was my tweet? There was a point in the game where the teams had combined for about, it was 287 rushing yards compared to 186 passing yards. So even with, it was pretty much working, the 6-2 front, but you still had J.K. Dobbins breaking free on a couple runs and everything, or Huntley on a keeper. But yeah, it was really just this old school shortened game. There was also a point where it looked like the biggest play in the game was going to be a Cameron Hayward unsportsmanlike conduct penalty just before the half. It was on 3rd down. The Ravens would have kicked a field goal to go up, 6-3.
A 4-point penalty.
Yeah, a 4-point penalty. And
4-point phantom penalty.
Yeah, it looked weird. Like he was kind of pushed onto Huntley or on someone, and he was putting his hands up, and I don't know, they thought he pounced on him. Next play, Tyler Huntley hit Isaiah Likely for a 7-yard touchdown. So Baltimore went up 10-3 just before the half with 11 seconds, right? That was easily just going to be a field goal situation. And then the Ravens get up 10 with a 51-yard field goal from Justin Tucker. It's 13-3. The game's trudging along. It feels like old school Steelers and Ravens, and it's run game, and nobody's moving the ball through the air. Ravens are up 10, but they've once again blown a 10-point lead.
Them and the Raiders.
Yeah,
it's been an impressive season for that. So that's 2 games this week where there was a 4-point penalty that was a major part of the game. The Philadelphia one that we covered earlier, which again was ridiculous, and then this one, which was ridiculous. For a while, looked like it was going to be, potentially a determining play in the game until Kenny Pickett comes up clutch late on. The other player that was massive in this game that deserves a ton of credit was Najee Harris, who was dominating in every phase, right? Was great on the ground, was one of his best rushing performances. He was the player that catches the touchdown with a great play as a receiver.
Game winner.
And he also kept the drive alive by taking it upon himself to grab Kenny Pickett and throw him into a different gap than the one he was trying to get into on a sneak. Like, it wasn't even the maul play. It was like Kenny Pickett launches himself, is basically stuffed, Najee Harris just comes in, grabs hold of him, and like throws him one gap to the left where there's actually a bit of space and drags him there. So the guy was crushing it on the ground as a rusher, had the big play as a receiver, and kept the drive alive in one of those sort of heady, not on the script plays where you just make something happen where it wasn't there to happen.
It does feel like, so Jalen Warren's an undrafted free agent that's gotten a little love in Pittsburgh this season. Early in the year, he was creating far more explosive plays than Najee. He just kept putting the ball on the turf. It does feel like Najee's been a little rejuvenated by Warren's emergence, because Warren had a good game as well, running the ball and catching it. And I still think this last 5-6 weeks has been the best stretch of, Najee's 2-year career, but this is the best he's run, most consistent that he's run. And even just the Steelers' O-line up front playing a little bit better as the season's gone on. They were fantastic. Just winning up front. It did feel a little old school Steelers football. But after all that, right, they had run the ball. They had done a pretty good job containing the Ravens' offense, stopping the run and the whole deal. The Steelers weren't scoring any points, right? Running the ball is all great, like you were just saying with the Rams game, right? Yeah, they had a bunch of rushing yards, but they weren't putting points on the board. Steelers had 6 points going into the fourth quarter, and get a field goal to get within 13-9. But that game-winning touchdown drive by Kenny Pickett, once again, there's a seam route in there that is just an absolute beauty. And then the touchdown to Najee Harris, just making plays outside of structure. Jason Pierre-Paul barely got a hand on him, couldn't pull him down. And Pickett just rolling to his left, puts the ball up and away from coverage to Najee for the touchdown. Pickett's been showing, when you, for whatever it's worth, fourth quarter magic, when you put the ball in his hands to make plays. He didn't do it against the Dolphins, had multiple interceptions on that first Sunday Night Football attempt, but these last 3 times, we had Christmas Eve against the Raiders, and then this week, unbelievable down the stretch here by Pickett.
Yeah, that felt like a legitimately clutch play from him late on in the game. Felt like clutch play. He was really good. This was also the best performance, I think, from TJ Watt since he came back. Like, I know the kind of on-off splits for the Steelers when TJ Watt is on versus off the field are pretty crazy, but he hadn't actually played that well since coming back. Which is why, by the way, it's insane that guy made the Pro Bowl this year, despite not playing for most of the year.
Like Rafael Palmeiro winning the Gold Glove as a DH.
Exactly like that. But this game, he was legit in this game, absolutely destroying your guy. Poor old
Morgan. Yeah, Morgan Moses, not the best game for him. And it's since I called him out for having a career year, he's no longer having a career year. His grade has dropped below his career high now after last night's game. He was at a 9. It's tough to predict ball, right? He was a 90 grade last week against the Falcons. This week, probably down in the 40s.
That definitely needs to be a quote graphic for you this season. It's tough to predict ball.
It's tough to predict ball.
Minus whatever your season total is.
Except for Harry, who's wait, did he get this game?
Unless
too?
you're 7-year-old, it's hard to predict ball.
Yeah, some people were mad that we were giving Harry's picks, but maybe you should listen.
Well, I'm mad because it's ruining your season record.
I know. What did he pick in this game? Harry picked Baltimore to cover now, so he loses that one. You got Pittsburgh.
Oh, thank God.
How many wins do you have this week?
Not many at all.
3?
I had a terrible week.
That's 3 for you. And we both have Cincinnati in tonight's game. So Pittsburgh wins.
It's my worst week of the year.
Sorry about that. Yeah, because you don't have me to pick against. I
know.
Yeah,
it's ruined my whole process.
Really ruined things. Impressive by the Steelers. Got to feel good about the future, I think, with Pickett now for whatever it's worth. After all that excitement, though, it's so funny because he's still 6.2 yards per attempt. He was 15 of 27 for 168. Like, what matters more? Is it all of the production, or is it just that he's showing these signs of life here? I still come back to Matt Canada's offense doesn't create anything easy.
Yeah.
Doesn't create. If you have an offense with these playmakers in the way Pickett has played, and the way Trubisky played, to be honest, this season. Trubisky threw the ball pretty well this season. There's no free offense in this Steelers offense. if they can adjust that this offseason, I think there's maybe something to build around here.
Yeah, I do think it's slightly different than some other quarterback situations where you're like, okay, if you're showing this degree of ability, it should be more productive. And it should be, but I don't think the limiting factor here is Kenny Pickett. I think the limiting factor is the offensive scheme and what it's creating. So I think Kenny Pickett, if he played at this level consistently, like if this was his baseline all the way through the season, you would be very happy from him as a quarterback. But it wouldn't necessarily mean that the offense would be absolutely cooking, because I don't think it's helping him out too much. Now, like, that needs to change, but I think so far, like if Kenny Pickett plays at this kind of level, or even if this is just the sort of a data point on the general up and down tracking of his season, he looks really good right now.
Yeah, I've been impressed. You know, even it's interesting because we always have to we defended his grade against the Colts on Monday Night Football, where he had about $190 or whatever it was. He's making good decisions. He's creating outside of structure, inside of structure. It's been really good, I think, for Pickett so far. Ravens still look limited with Tyler Huntley under center, what they could do in the pass game. He did make a few nice throws to keep him in it. Mark Andrews had 100 of the 130 receiving yards for the Ravens. It was all Andrews. They were backed up a couple times. Andrews just kept making plays. It does feel like Huntley, like Lamar Jackson, can kind of overcome the fact that they haven't built a great group of playmakers besides Mark Andrews there with the Ravens, that they don't have this great receiving core. It doesn't feel like Huntley can really overcome that in the same way. We'll see if Lamar Jackson comes back. There's a chance next week. If the Bengals lose tonight, the Ravens are still playing for the division, right? Mm-hmm. Is that right?
If the Bengals lose, yes.
Yeah, because they would both be they could both have 6 losses. So the Ravens are still playing for the division if the Bengals lose tonight. And we'll see if Lamar comes back for that game. They're 3-2 now without Lamar Jackson. But I think more importantly, the offense has been just not putting points up.
Yep.
And you can't win all these games 13-3. So that's it, man. Did we do all the games?
Sure. Hopefully.
Wow, that was quick. When you skip a couple of games, basically, it's pretty efficient.
When you give people nothing on a couple of games, you can fly right through these.
If you tuned in for Jacksonville, Houston,
sorry,
I don't know what to tell you. So, anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the game tonight. Bills-Bengals. We haven't had the best Monday Night Football games this year, but they got this one right. Second last week of the season. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, head-to-head. It's going to be fun. So enjoy that. We'll be back. We'll review the whole game on Wednesday. And we'll be back on Thursday previewing Week 18. I also want to hear from people. Do you want me to do a scenario podcast? Oh, God. PFF NFL Daily. I will simply read out each team's scenarios.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
If you do,
you'll have a night off.
Yeah, I'm not going to be there for that one. I'll just let you go.
I need you to do the ad read.
Nope.
For that. Pre-record it.
I want to see your transition.
I just want to see it. Will that play? Does that have legs?
Absolutely.
On the daily. Steve just reads out the scenario. We could timestamp it like, here's your team scenarios. Houston Texans, you get the first overall pick with a loss. Bears, you get the first overall pick with a loss and a Texans win. I'll do it in computer voice too. All right, let's get out of here early. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Wednesday.